Hey David, how you doing?
I'm good, Keith. How are you?
Good. Long time no see.
It's been a hot minute. Yes, I think 20 something, over a little over 20 years.
That's insane. To me the time just flies by. I mean, I think I met you when you were like what, 18, 19,
It's worse than that. It was 17.
17. Oh my god. You were the first person I ever saw to interface with a computer without a mouse. We would be in the server room and I would just see all these windows fly up and you're using just hotkeys everywhere like you were playing StarCraft or something.
That sounds about right. I mean, I was always a fast typer, right? And so there was always the idea of like, well, I can type faster than I can click,
Yeah.
right? And point and click, and starting off with DOS 3 point something and Windows 3 point something and all of that, right? And you just go through the book, right, and read all the shortcut Alt Tab, Alt F4, all the all the quip commands there, right? And so yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of fun. Fun's not no, fun's the wrong word, but yeah, flying around the keyboard,
Yeah.
invoking things as quickly as possible.
So I had Rick Segal make me a little intro video that I'm going to attach to this, talking to me a little bit
Great.
about how you sent a floppy disk to Microsoft
Yes,
when you're
yeah.
what,
I did.
12?
Did he talk about it? Well, yeah, it was something like that. Yeah, our origin story. I guess really, yeah. If we want to go back to it, right? So the origin story with Rick Segal, who's sort of my mentor and benefactor, and certainly how we connected, right? How we got to meet
Absolutely.
each other
Yeah.
up there in Toronto. Yeah, back in. Well, hey, you got a video. You want to hit the video, or do you want me to go spiel on first?
So you have to remember that back in the 90s, Microsoft was much smaller and it spent a lot of its time uh, playing the underdog. So we answered everybody's emails. We did everything we could to be, a company that was the underdog from IBM. So we had a developer relations group. And when things came in to Bill Gates's office, one at that time, Bill read everything. Just email came in, which was still actually a novel thing, or physical letters came in. He read them all. And then he would just, send this to this, do this, do that. So one of the things that happened was that David Zazzo of Zazzo Productions, hilarious, sent in a uh, floppy disk, and it was the 3 1/4 inch, 3 and a quarter inch. So it's a physical hard thing, right? In an actual envelope, no padding, nothing. So of course, when the envelope made it all the way through, it turned into a pile of garbage, right? It was just a big pile. So it was a bit of a problem, and there was a note in it. This is my, Zazzo Productions want to get a partnership with Microsoft. It was in, it wasn't in crayon, but it was close. So it wandered its way down the food chain and landed on my desk. And a guy by the name of Steve Banfield and we chased down who this was. We knew it was a kid. Got a hold of his parents and said, "Look, we'll come out. We'll make a big deal out of it. We really want to encourage, him and all that stuff. And so just we want to show up unannounced." So we went into the locker, and again, at this time, this was, the heavy tchotchkes days, hats and T-shirts and all that stuff. Plus, software was still in boxes. So Microsoft Office, the compilers, everything was still physically in boxes. So we got one of everything. Every single box software that Microsoft was shipping at the time, put it in a giant box. So we drive out to David's house. Again, tipped his parents off that we were coming. So we knocked on the door, and his dad answered the door. We made a big deal out of we're here to see Mr. Zazzo of Zazzo Productions. So this kid, about that high, rolls in, and we get a tour of Zazzo Productions, which was his bedroom, and his equipment and all that stuff. And so we gave him everything. Like, we gave him all the software. We ended up at one point finding, leftover PCs. Like, for years, we would be anything we give it to David, give it to David. And one time, David came to get a tour of the campus, the original Microsoft campus. And so Steve and I found one of the guys who had no idea who this was. And so we, come running into this guy's office, and we say, "Look, Jeff, you gotta gonna handle this meeting. We're busy. Mr. Zazzo from Zazzo Productions is coming in. You know, he's an important client. We need to make sure he's treated right. So okay, right. So they show up. He's in a boardroom. You know, we're like just outside of range. You know, Jeff goes flying into the room. And he sees this kid. And he looks back over here. He sees us, and we're like, you know, just that's who it is. So we treat him like royalty. And it was amazing. So for years, he was it, right? We would always send him stuff and do whatever, and he, you know, was great. He graduated high school. He was and is an incredibly smart guy now, right? Like he's got his own child and everything. Ended up working for UW, I believe, University of Washington, and then eventually made it to Microsoft, and he's been working there, I don't know, for 18 plus years. But it was just amazing, and his timing couldn't have been better, because it was before all of the monopoly stuff. It was all before DOJ. It was an amazing time, and his timing was great, and his parents were incredibly supportive. So yeah, he was a great project.
Yeah, so no, I mean, growing up was always, I grew up in and still reside in Microsoft's backyard, right?
Yeah.
Redmond, Washington, Microsoft corporate headquarters is, well, now on a decent day, it's about an hour, but, 45 minutes, to an hour south of where I live. And, when I grew up, I grew up 20 minutes away, right? Right in the shadow of Redmond. And so, it was always interesting, right? My father and I put together our first computer in 286 Hyundai kit computer that we bought from, I swear to God, something like Ballard Computer, which is, RIP Ballard Computer. Um, and, it was always entertaining. I had an affinity towards the thing, from a young age, and even in elementary school, early elementary school, when we had the Apple IIe and the Apple IIgs machines with Apple Works on the floppy, right, on the 3.5-inch floppy. It just made sense to me. Technology has just sort of been, computers and things have just sort of made sense, and I don't mean that in some sort of like, uber geek kind of way, but just I have an intuition about how things are designed and how things should work, right? Crawl into the engineer or the designer's mind, and well, this I think is what they were intending. Could still be a crappy design, but like, okay, I think I see where they're going here. Um, so again, back into the 286, right? And it was always entertaining. My father and I put the kit together and turned it on, and this was back in the 5 1/4 floppies, or back when floppies were actually floppy.
That's what
Um,
Rick said you sent Microsoft was
I sent a 3.5-inch disc. I
okay.
sent a hard case floppy, but
He said it
that
came
was
in the mail all crumpled and kind of destroyed, and he was in charge
probably
of
true.
trying to figure out
What the hell to do with it?
what this was all about.
Yeah.
So he said he tracked you down and contacted your mother and figured out a way to have the introduction.
I mean, that's kind of it. Yeah. I mean, again, in the early days, really what my objective was is like a fifth grader or something. So yeah, that puts me at like, 12, 10, 11, 12, right? Um, was like, hey, I was writing, simple batch programs, right? .bat files and just like, stupid system launcher shit. Stuff you'd put into autoexec.bat, right? There you go. We're gonna go Ray into the Wayback Machine. And a lot of it was like, I just wanted to use the stupid DOS logo, right? This was fun for me. I'm 12. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But I want to use, the little MS-DOS logo on the thing, right? And so you don't know anything when you're 12. You send it to Microsoft Corporation, 1 Microsoft Way, Redmond, Washington, 98052, right? And didn't hear anything. Got nothing at all. And it bounced around, as I'm told by Rick's, as well, been just sort of told to bounce around for a little while, ended up over in customer support for a hot minute, ended up somewhere else, and then somehow landed on Rick's desk. And as I've heard it, told, and I think he talked about it at a Chapters Online staff meeting once. That was delightful.
I remember that we were at Second
it was,
City or something.
yeah, it was at Second City. It's exactly what it was. And I'm just like, towards me. As I understand, he was like, well, this seems interesting. And so, yeah, we got a phone call at the house from a guy named Rick, Rick at Microsoft looking for, some guy named David, some
Mr. Zazzo.
probably obviously kid, right? Um, and, kind of the rest was sort of history. I mean, it was, him and his role at Microsoft. He had a variety of different roles. Excuse me, but what he I think when I first met him, he was in developer evangelism, right? He worked in early multimedia, pre-DirectX days, and there's a whole book, Renegades of the Empire. If you haven't read that yet, find a copy on chapters.ca. It takes you to Indigo.ca now. It's fine. Um, and or Amazon CA or what do we want to do? But if you find a copy of the book, Renegades of the Empire, that goes into a lot of Rick's backstory, which I find is interesting. But yeah, I met him in the developer evangelism
Which is a
department, right?
perfect role
And
for him.
perfect role for him. And I'm sure most of your listeners have never met Rick Segal or come across him, but it is perfect. Meeting Rick and meeting his family too, right? His wife and daughters, and becoming family friends with them. He goes out of his way to help others, right? And to find ways to empower others and let them run and do their thing. And so with that, as a 12-year-old dumb fifth grader who doesn't know anything about anything, he provided so many resources and so much, I mean, donated by Microsoft, right? And here I'm working for the company now, 18 years in. um, but so many resources from machines, right? I had a 286, and all of a sudden I've got a 486 or something, or a Pentium, right? What was the year? Gateway 2000 machine, right? Like, had a lot of resources provided by the company, books, software, right? I had the whole back office suite for a little while. That's where I learned Exchange Server, learned Windows NT. Was like, hey, I want to play with NT. Can I get a copy? And a copy shows up on the door, right?
Yeah,
Um,
he was saying that every little scrap that they had, they're like, ship it to Zazzo.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, tons of stuff. I mean, and a fun story that I don't think he's told anybody is, he reached out once and asked, hey, would I be interested in some extra bags and T-shirts from this multimedia developer boot camp thing that they did? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll take a couple. It's fine. All right, cool. It'll be on its way. And then all of a sudden, one afternoon, I think after school, UPS truck shows up, right? The big brown truck shows up and backs into the driveway.
Okay.
Okay. And the door rolls up, and my mom and I fly out to the thing. I'm like, yeah, what's this? The whole truck was for me.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, extra bags and T-shirts, and it was 14. If I'm remembering this correctly, it's been a minute. 14 boxes of 20 bags apiece, and two or three boxes of like 70 to 80 T-shirts apiece, all different sizes and things. These little green, tiny little duffels, about yay big. Um, and that just unloaded into the garage.
What the heck?
And so here we are with like 320 bags or something like that, if I'm doing the math right? 300 something bags and 160 T-shirts. And we're like, okay, now what do we do with this stuff? And so I was flinging them all over the place. I mean, it was, took boxes. I grew up in the evangelical church back when I did that thing. And so just offloaded, here's four or five, here's 100 different duffel bags, to take to, uh, you know, give them out there. I took three or four boxes. This was 60 or 80 bags, to the junior high school I went to at the time. Right. And it always amused me when I saw in junior high and high school, the honor kids walking around with a Microsoft multimedia. I know where that bag came from.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, I mean, again, in that thing, and like you said, Rick, would provide any scrap, any resources I ever wanted to learn about, right? Try to cut my teeth into. He just made available, right? And then in the early days of sort of pre-broadband, when we're talking about, the 56K modem and things, right around the time that, well, this is before we got together at Wildfire, but. He provided an ISDN line. Right now, we're blazing fast at 128K, always on bonded, ISDN Braille lines, the whole thing, which was unreal, right?
Yeah.
Totally unreal, completely paid for by the company. I don't know how he pulled that off. That sort of thing would not be possible today.
So you summer interned right after you met him then?
I mean, right after I met him, was always just in touch. I got invited to speak at a couple of different like present, I wouldn't say conferences, but I had the opportunity to speak as a young, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, technology professional, excuse me. I remember doing a presentation, a pitch to the school district I was in, right, about how technology can help empower. I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm reading shit off of a paper, but like, you know, um, I got to speak on that. I think I vaguely remember, and I probably have a VHS tape somewhere that I got no way of playing anymore. Um, you know, uh, 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 a tape of me presenting at some other sort of town hall, right? And
Well,
then,
what age did you start working at Microsoft then?
well, I started working at Microsoft.
Or were you a
I
contractor before that?
Yeah, so I was a contractor there at Microsoft for about 4.5 minutes, right as I graduated from high school.
No, okay.
I'm proud to say I was on the Windows Millennium Edition team, or Windows Me, on the only feature that still exists today. So I was yeah I joined Microsoft as a software test engineer in 2000 on the Windows Me team on System Restore. Right, so the whole restore points thing, some of that tech still exists today.
So you weren't technically at Microsoft when you were working with me?
No, no, I wasn't at Microsoft at all when we met at Chapters, right? And so I didn't start working at Microsoft as a full-time employee until 2008.
Okay, so how did you get involved with Chapters in? Was that obviously that was a Rick thing,
That's a Rick production there. So yeah, so after this would have been mid high school for me.
which was like 98, 99?
So 90, yeah, 98, 99, 97, 98. He had left Microsoft after a successful stint there and went to go work I'll get to the chapters a bit here in a minute, but
Sure.
went to go work for a startup that had an office out in Bellevue, Washington, so close to the Microsoft campus, 5 minutes away from Microsoft campus. That did, way ahead of its time, kind of technology phone personal assistant. Think Siri, think, Alexa. Nothing's gonna wake up here in a minute. Stop. Unplug that so that doesn't happen again. Take care of that. It's not at the door, but they can wait. Um, yeah. So Wildfire was a company that did kind of, again, the first personal assistant stuff, right? Pick up the phone and hi, hi, my name's Wildfire. Who you trying to call? David. I'll go try to find him, right? And that sort of thing. Fluid language in the late 90s. We had fluid language, recognition and talk back and things. And for a variety of reasons, that gig fell apart. And so after he left Wildfire, he bounced to a couple of small things, but then ended up at Chapters. And I don't know how he ended up at Chapters Corporate, however he got connected there. But that was my introduction to him at Chapters, was after he left Wildfire. There was one weekend. I was just telling a friend about this earlier today. In fact, as a strange aside, um, he called me up. It was a random Thursday. I had left Wildfire and was working for Real Networks. If you remember Real Player and Real Jukebox, I was working for Real Networks for a little bit. This is all still in high school. Um, and I was driving over to downtown Seattle from the suburbs over here, Redmond, Kirkland, Washington area, and my phone rings. And Rick's like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" I'm like, Nothing." He's like, "Want to come up to Toronto?" Sure, I guess. Yeah, come work for me. I got some stuff for you to do. Okay. So turned around, went back, packed a bag, and then 45 minutes later was on Air Canada from Seattle to Vancouver, and then Air Canada from Vancouver over to Toronto Pearson, and
And of
spent the
course, Rick in
weekend.
his Ricky way completely built you up like you're a god of technology. Look at this whiz kid. He's here. He's like Einstein to all of
Oh
us.
man. Oh geez. Well, that was even before we moved into the 82 Peter Street spot. So that first trip was back at Chapters headquarters there in not Mississauga but Etobicoke, right?
Yeah.
So that was back in the old building before it split out to 82 Peter Street. And then yeah, so then that was that first weekend. I came back after that weekend. I have to apologize to Immigration Canada because I checked the right box on the form and they wanted to send me home, and Rick probably told them I was an idiot, 17-year-old doesn't know shit about shit, and so they let me in. Um, so if you're listening from Immigration Canada, I apologize for falsifying that form over 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. Um, But yeah, so then, I mean, stayed in touch with him, certainly was still doing some work for Real Networks. And then it was that summer, summer of '99, when he's like, "Hey, I've got a gig for a couple months. Come up here and do some stuff." And by then, I had my MCSE with Exchange 5.5 and NT4, and I had continued all that learning and all that work. And
That's
so
a
yeah,
really young age to have all those credentials.
young age to have all those creds. I don't know if I'm the youngest MCSE that ever was. No idea. I don't, doesn't really matter at this point.
And
But
that's
yeah, so then
Microsoft certified engineer.
as the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer was the MCSE. That was at the time the pinnacle of your technical certification with Microsoft. And doing it in Exchange 5.5 was particularly more difficult. Exchange is not a lightweight product.
Right.
Certainly wasn't at the time.
And we worked on that a little bit. So people
Well,
probably don't know, but Exchange is like the email architecture for.
absolutely. Yeah, apology. Right. Yeah. So Exchange Server is the back end of now Office 365 email, Outlook, Hotmail, now Outlook, right? So yeah, no, Exchange Server, and that whole stack of technologies is the backbone for it's Microsoft's email messaging service.
So were you given like a directive when you came up where you're like, okay, you're going to be working on this, or was it just come up here because we know you're going to be useful?
I don't know what the actual premise was. I think, the overall premise was like, hey, come work for me for the summer. Okay,
Just I
cool.
like you,
And
let's hang out.
yeah, sort of. Right. Yeah. And then I ended up staying with our buddy Chris Boyle and his family in his basement, which was one of these like being John Malkovich, like 4 foot kind of ceiling deals. Like you gotta kind of hunch over to get in, which was an entertaining experience.
Yeah, yeah. I grew up
But
with Chris.
whatever.
Chris and I are
Was
like,
that?
I grew up with Chris, so
Oh
we're
yeah, nice.
like high school friends.
And his brother Kevin, right? Am I getting that right?
Craig, Craig,
Craig. Thank you.
Chris and
I
Craig.
knew it
Yeah,
was a K sound.
yeah.
Yeah, so I had a place to live, and I'd take the TTC in and out of town, and where they were staying out by the beaches, and just kind of worked. And I again, I don't remember if I had a specific charter, other than hell, go run the mail server, do tech stuff, um, go make the thing work, and then it transitioned into some site operations work. I still have business card. I think it's in my storage unit, but I still have my chapter's business cards.
I have a chapter's hat somewhere.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Somewhere in a stack over here, I got my employee discount card that I'm sure doesn't work anymore.
I still had like a Project Tornado shirt somewhere too.
I don't remember Project Tornado.
We had this
What was
like
that?
I forget what it was exactly, but we had this like we came up with project names for everything, of course.
Well, of course, that's what you do.
Yeah,
Somewhere I've got a chapter scarves. I still have my full tilt at chapter CA
full
shirt.
tilt. Yeah, that was great.
And that was around the Second City, employee meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
When I arrived
yeah,
there, I think there was like 50 people working, and then in a year it was like
about right.
1,500 people, something
That
like that.
sounds. It feels right. I
Yeah,
mean, it
it was
feels about
ridiculous.
right. I
We
mean,
were
I
on
know the
one
home
floor,
office,
and then all of a sudden we had the whole building, and then we
the
bought the
whole
building
damn
next to
building.
it. And I remember telling Rick, I'm like, why don't we just like knock out this wall? Because there was like a walkway between the two buildings.
That's right, behind 82 Peter, right?
Yeah. And it was like an old textile building or something like that. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
why don't you buy the building next door? There's already a walkway there, and then you guys could just do that. And then
I
they
see. I
bought the
seem to
building.
remember that. Was
Yeah.
that when did that expansion happen? Because I think that might have been after I
Maybe
left.
you had
So my
left. Yeah.
last stint up there was Y2K was my last stint, right?
Yeah.
So I remember being, invited back up for the, January 1st, 2000 rollover.
That's
And
about my time too, because Rick had went to Microform, and
that's right.
I went there with him.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, we kind of off boarded at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember being huddled around the computer screens waiting for the world to end.
Yeah.
Hearing the fireworks off the
Did you actually
tower,
believe
a couple
that, or
blocks
I mean,
away. No.
you knew what was going on. You knew this was all BS,
I
right?
figured I didn't buy into the doomsday power grid's going to shut down, all that sort of thing. It's like this is going to be a big nothing. But okay, here we go. Click.
Yeah. I mean, people literally thought airplanes
Okay.
were going to fall from the sky and your toaster
know.
was going to kill you or something. I don't know.
I know it was a bizarre time. I don't know that times are less bizarre, but it was an interesting time.
Yeah, times are a little bit more freaking crazy, I think, now. What do you think of all this AI stuff happening? Like, probably know more than a lot of people that I talk to on a daily basis as to what the real realities are. Do you think AI is doing what it? I mean, we're kind of like jumping 30 years ahead now, but do you think AI is as scary as people think? What is your gut instinct?
It's interesting. I don't know that I've got. I'm not sure that I have a strong opinion about it. I got a bunch of opinions, but I'll say this. I've played with a little bit of some of the AI models in working on some of my side job stuff that I have, right? And I've done a little bit with my day job stuff as well. But um, from the development side of the world, right, where I do some C sharp and PowerShell coding, and I can do some development. Most of my work is going to be more back end, right? So front end development, I can tell you what looks good. I can tell you how want things to look. Can't get there myself, right? I don't know. Back when I was writing HTML was Notepad bracket HTML bracket enter bracket head bracket
Yeah.
typing it all out in Notepad.
TD, TR. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing. Um,
Yeah, when I was coding for DuPont, there was no hot dog, there was no Dreamweaver, it was
right,
Notepad.
yeah. It was
And
Notepad.
I was
Text
entering in
editor.
every single product that DuPont and 3M and all those companies had, Novartis, I was working and I was hand coding every single product into their system.
Yeah, right. And so that's where, I'll say that, I had this idea for one of my side jobs of, build me an interface where I can drag and drop stuff and then save it to the database. And I couldn't begin to tell you how to write a drag and drop interface and all the hooks and the JavaScript required and all that stuff. But it took about a week of me kind of, vibe coding. I think that's a stupid term, but that's, but, prompting the stupid thing to be like, here's what I want. I've got this. Here's how the data's structured. I want this, that, the other thing. And I need to be able to have a thing over here and a thing over here and look back and whatever else. And, and after about a week, I had something that worked. And I could drag and drop the things over here and hit save, and it would post it to the database in the right format. And all of that. And it took me a week of kind of just typing into the stupid thing and kind of prompting it and course correcting it. We're gonna go over here a little bit and let's go, okay, you messed that thing up over there. Um, so that stuff's kind of powerful.
Hmm.
Where, point in time today, and it's gonna get better, which is a little I guess it is terrifying to some degree, right? It's like, well, cool, I see how I'm gonna be out of a job in a couple of years. It's like, um, we're still not at a point where, at least from the technical side, right, from the software development side, you still kind of have to know what you're doing because the thing will wrap itself around the axle,
Yes.
right? It will get tangled up, it will get lost, it will hallucinate, it will do all sorts of mass awkward stuff that, like, if you don't know the underpinnings and the foundation of the thing, then you won't know how to tell it how to undork itself,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where knowing enough about what the platform is supposed to do and how I want it to work and how I know the interactions of all the components work, that's where I can steer it correctly. If I didn't know all of that, I didn't know that for Azure App Services, in process or out of process hosting model, whatever, nobody cares. But like, if you don't know those finer details, then when the thing gets stuck and now you can't deploy and your apps won't start and the whole thing's gone to hell, you won't know how to recover from it. And
Well, it's
asking
also
it, hey,
you
what's
can
going on? It doesn't get you there.
yeah, and you can also help it. You can say, "Well, I see what you did wrong. You're doing this
Mhm.
wrong," that sort of thing. I find, but it's interesting because I've been solo for a long time now, for like 20 years. I've run my own company, and I deal with clients, and I know that the clients don't have a clue what they want. So
Right.
most of my time spent as a mind reader, where I sit down, I properly diagnose, and then I figure out what they actually want, and then throw that out the window and tell them what they should want, and that sort of thing. AI is not there yet. Like I have a client who came to me with, "Oh, I had Grok make me a website. Can you implement it?" And he just gave me a bunch of screenshots of Grok, and it was literally like, half an angle where it showed a computer screen and then a crazy background. I'm like, that's not a website, but
That's not yeah, right.
I can
Yeah.
help you maybe make that into a website. So people just don't understand as well the technologies and how to implement them. But it won't matter because they'll just be able to speak into existence whatever they want at an instant.
Well, and that's the part that is it's fascinating and it's empowering is, I think we'll see an interesting evolution. This is my pure hypothesis, right? We'll see an interesting part where like the no code platforms, right? If you think the one I know well is Power Platform, right? Power Apps and Power Automate from my company, Microsoft.
You
No
talking like
code
the Wix and
stuff.
Webflows of the world as
Yeah,
well?
stuff like that, right? Or even WordPress to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like I can drag and drop things. Squarespace is another example, right? I can drop parts onto a page, and I mean, Squarespace is ahead of a lot of others that they've got nicely, beautifully designed templates, and their stuff can flow pretty well. But I can certainly see where it's going to get to a point where no code things, or again, Power Apps. I've got for one of the side jobs, I've got a mobile app that we can use to report our do our recaps and things like that. Um, Excuse me. uh that stuff is going to be more full code, but it won't take you anything to go build it, right? Or I can say, like you said, speak it into existence. I can take something and make it a robust mobile application, a robust web application, SPA or otherwise, and it didn't take me much to do it. And there's real code running on it, right?
Yeah.
It's not a word part, web parts thing. It's not a snap blitz. What do they call them? It's not necessarily just a drop and drag and drop modular approach, but there's actually real code running that is doing real work, and it's not abstracted, and it's not obfuscated, and it's not watered down enough that some of these no code things where it's like, yeah, okay, it's an app and it's functional, but it's not really an app, right?
Well, the exponential curve as to the progress is blowing my mind. Because like 3 years ago, I remember
Mm,
coding with it for a little bit and having to like beat it into submission. Excuse me. And just be like, no, that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. And it's so frustrating working with it. And then the freaking context window gets too big and you have to start all over again. And then you're trying to get it to catch up with you. But now, I mean, I'm telling you, like even Codex, like it's one-shotting things that I'm telling it to do these days.
yeah.
It's
No,
crazy.
it's. I mean, I've had more exposure to the cloud, cloud comp, code models, and you're right. From 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to 4.6, it's giant steps towards getting better about it and handling larger and larger and more complexity, larger and larger projects and more complexity in those projects. You're right. We still have, as you approach the context window, it gets dumber and dumber and makes more and more errors. And you can enlarge that at significant cost.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
uh, and a big challenge today is, from task to task, right? Like, how do you best break up the thing you want to do? You got to become a project manager, basically, right? Take up
Right.
the big task, chunk it into things, and have it try to keep its state over time. That's the biggest challenge that I see right now, is doing large, complex projects that aren't just a quick, one item, one Windows worth. But how do you chunk it up so that you can actually complete it? And again, when I'm talking about front end stuff, I don't know what the hell I'm doing for front end development, so I can't go in and go fix it. Really, I could if I stared at it long enough. But that's the beauty of some of these tools today, is I don't have to go worry about that. I don't have time to go learn front end development. Never have wanted to. Never been one of my affinities. Uh,
And that's what I do.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm
See,
the
there you
front
go.
end
Perfect.
guy. But yeah, like I just don't. Right now, it seems like we're kind of eliminating your regular dev employee. Excuse me. Right now, we're that kind of like DevOps kind of guy and things like that are going to be kind of they're kind of probably lose their jobs a little bit to AI unless they're really into AI, and then they just enhances them. But it seems like now the roles of director, implementer, project manager, those are the important ones now to be able to interface with the AI better.
Yeah, I think that's. I think there's truth in that. I think the junior dev engineer. I see the role evolving into a couple of different things. I think it's still always in all things. I believe in the fundamentals, right? I think you've got to know. What was the old ad? There was an old adage of like the one who knows how will always have a job. The one who knows why will always be their boss. And so if you look at that with AI being the how person, right, who has a job, right, I've got an agent that's going to go do the work, but I know why the thing I'm having it do work, why it works, I think is where it's really important, right? It's important to have those foundational all that scaffolding in place. So that even, then you get better at prompt engineering. You get better at telling the model what you want it to do, and then you can become, you can do more with less, right? And it's the corporate buzz thing. Do more with less. We just laid off half the people. You get to do more now.
Yeah.
Not what we're talking about. But I think the junior dev goes that way, right? When I think about it in a different way. One of my hobbies on the side is live technical production, right? Live shows. And, I started doing audio engineering. I started doing video engineering. I started doing lighting engineering. And I've done all of these roles as running wire and setting up projectors and running playback systems and things like that. And now that I do more technical direction and more producer type roles, I now have the language to be able to tell those roles, and I can communicate with the technical staff and the tech team in what I'm looking for. They can go, well, what do you think about this? I'm like, I like that idea. And yeah, we could put the thing on this and whatever. Having that language means that I can communicate. I can do more. I'm still I'm still a director and still a producer. I can do more, and they can trust me more. I'm not worried about AI trusting me. Spinning this back into the technology side of it is having the language to tell the model what to do. And when it asks me a question, clarification, you want to do it this way or that way, knowing what it's actually asking me, then I can tell it more and prompt it and go deliver on the thing. So I think
you bring up such a good point, because it's like, it used to be, the whole adage of like, he's a jack of all trades and master of none was like really kind of frowned upon. But being that kind of a generalist is actually a huge benefit these days. If you know a little bit about, or even a lot about a lot of things, it really is powerful when you're communicating with a product like AI, right?
Well, and when you're and when you're being communicated to, again, there's times where the model's gonna be like, hey, I've got a fork in the road. You want to go this way or this way? I think this way, but what do you think? And I had one recently in the day job where it was like, well, yeah, you could do that path, but then that's like an interim step. We're going to go here at the end. So why not just go there and save all the pain? And it was like, yeah, that's a good idea. You're right. And of course, it's always superfluous. It's always blowing sunshine at you. Anyway, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. Some of that gets annoying. Oh, that's a really good idea. Shut up.
Stop wasting tokens.
Stop stop blowing sunshine by wasting your context window. That's costing me money to appreciate me. Knock it off.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I think it's understanding the fundamentals, no matter what level, no matter what role, makes you a better whatever the thing is, right? And I think that's true of any industry, right? If you're maritime and you're a chief engineer on a boat, knowing how the motor, I don't know anything about boats.
Know what port versus starboard is.
Yeah, right. Knowing all of these things then makes you to be able to be a chief engineer, to be a technical producer, an executive producer, to be a technical director, to be the CTO of an organization, to be a senior, principal level software engineer, to be an engineering manager, right? If you know the fundamentals, both you can mentor people, and like in our steps of our friend Rick, or empower people, or be able to get better out of whatever the tool set is. And if the tool set when we were coming up was Notepad, and then it became Dreamweaver, you still have to know how HTML works to know what Dreamweaver is actually doing under the hood. And now into AI, where we can do complex, can build a whole cloud service just by chatting with the thing.
But even to say things like use Tailwind for the front end and use Bootstrap and use whatever PHP, or use LAMP stacks, or use ASP, whatever you want to use. If you're directing it and telling it to set up all that stuff, it's great to know now. But you fast forward 5-10 years down the road, none of this stuff is going to matter anyways. I don't think. Like it'd be helpful for sure, but most layman people, like there's most likely not going to be set apps. It's going to be apps on demand. You're just going to be, I need to know what this does, and it'll whip up something for you really quick and then make it disappear. Like, it doesn't need to store apps on your computer anymore, right? It'll be more like
Right.
fundamental in the LLMs,
Really
if they're still
ephemeral,
LLMs.
ephemeral apps.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean that's a good point, right? I think there's an interesting inflection point here where what what the PC and the Mac, right, did for bringing a computer into every space, right? I mean, not to whatever, be a home fan, but like, Microsoft's vision at the beginning was a computer on every desk,
Yeah.
right? But we've done that now, right? But then, what people could do in their productivity through the 90s, right? Through that really evolutionary time, back when I thought this stuff was all fun. Now it's just work. But like, the 90s was an exciting time to be on the forefront of this stuff, right? Because
Yeah.
everything was new. Everything was giant steps of innovation and the ability to unlock all sorts of new stuff. Now it feels to me that we've kind of hit, plateau in the 2000s and 10s, and now as we approach the mid 20s, now we're kind of going like this again,
I
right?
agree.
Where we can extend custom apps. Hey, I want a thing to go. Well, I'll get to that in a second. I need a thing to go do this, whatever this thing is, X, Y, Z, and now I can speak it into being, right? And maybe I need it for an afternoon and then it goes away,
Yeah.
right? But we can empower more people to be more creative and get more work done. Not that it's all about productivity and dollars per cycle. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Um, the thing I was just going to bump on was, my wife and I, between the two of us, have three kids, right? And so, in a family of five, running a house, you have chores, right? And nobody wants to do the chores. I don't want to do all the chores, so everybody gets to do chores. And we had a model where it was like, we had a little Word doc of here's the chores, and we would do this painful exercise every month of come sign up for your chores, and it's going to be the thing where, all right, we'll go youngest, middle, oldest, middle, youngest. You choose one, you choose one, and then we kind of divvy up all the chores that way: daily chores, weekly chores. You got to clean the room all the time, things like that. And right around the time that I was, I was like, oh, like, we'll play with this AI thing. Was like, this is dumb. Nobody likes picking the chores this way. Let's just have a way to just distribute chores in a seemingly fair and yet random kind of way. So no one's like, well, he gets the top dishwasher all the time, and I hate doing the bottom of the dishwasher. Shut up, whatever. We're doing chores. Um, and inspired by, we have Harry Potter on all the time in the living room here, was like, well, let's go build a sorting hat. Let's go build a chores sorting wizard that we can go, here's all the people, here's the chores. Some are weekly, some are daily, some are kids only, some are adults only, because I don't trust them to remember to take the cans out to the curb for the garbage truck.
Yeah.
Go. And now I have a chores wizard, website that I can go in, and every month, and now that we're in April, we'll do it. We'll have the sorting ceremony tonight when everyone's home, and it goes spit out a chores sorter, right? What a stupid kind of idea, but I don't have time to go write all that from scratch, and I can go tell an AI to do it in an afternoon, sit on the couch while Harry Potter's on,
Yeah.
and go. I'm going to type out the things. I want a website. To your point, it needs to be in ASP.NET, C#, because that's what I know, so I can go into the code and look at it. If it writes it in Python and Rust, I'm totally lost. If it's in TypeScript, I don't know what the hell I'm doing there, right? So it's got to be in a language that I know. Your point's valid. If you don't know any language, then who cares what the damn thing's written in?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I can write a one-off application to go build a chores thing for my family because I hate doing the chores thing and having everyone,
Now you
write
throw
on
that
a
on.
piece of paper.
Now you throw that up on Product Hunt, and you're a millionaire.
See, there you go. That's the next step. Right after this, I'm gonna go. What was the product time? I'm gonna go do that real quick.
Product Hunt.
Oh, product hunt. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Also tens of dollars.
Yeah.
And then we put it into our, we got the little Skylight calendar thing, plug for Skylight. Home organization calendar thing here, and then they can check off. It's right over here, which is why you can't see it, but they can
Yep.
check off their chores and earn rewards and stars and stuff, and get more time on their VRs and all the nonsense we didn't have growing up.
That's pretty cool. How old's your oldest kid?
Yeah, he's 14. We've got
14?
a daughter that's 12, almost 13, and then my kids. Now those are hers. My kid's almost 7.
Oh,
No,
wow.
he is 7. He's 7.5.
So what do you think? Are you worried about the future for them? Or are you excited about the future?
existentially.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Well, with AI, pretty much,
I mean,
first of all,
it's interesting. When I reflect on kind of like what the older two kids seem to be interested, I don't know how much they're. I don't know. We allow them access to limited AI capabilities. As much as like Siri on the iPhone lets you do,
like a
and where that's
GPT.
going. Not full fettered access, right? So it's still, we let them have access, limited access to Copilot, which I think is a pretty safe boundary and sandbox to play in. They won't touch Grok at all. If I
Yeah,
have
probably
my
not.
way on it.
Yeah.
And there's a whole right of reasons for that, why that's going to be true. But um,
Companions for one.
among other things,
Yeah.
unhinged mode. If you ever play with it in a Tesla that's got it, that's not family friendly.
Yeah.
Um, it's it'll be interesting to see
I talk to a lot
how
of
it.
people and like on my stream and stuff like that where they know I'm into AI, so they're asking me all these types of questions. Some of them are the questions feel like they're coming from a place of panic. So they're just like really worried
Okay.
about the future. They're really worried. And I've been talking to some people and I've been very hopeful with it. I've been trying to, like tell people how much people feared Gutenberg, how much people feared the radio,
Right.
how much people feared the internet. Like when we were
Right.
starting the internet, some people took it as like, this is nothing. It's going to go away in 2 seconds. Psh, it's a fad. Remember the internet's a fad,
Yeah. Right.
which blew my mind. I can't believe people
Still
thought
might be.
that.
We'll see.
But then like, yeah, it might be. But then like, I'm trying to like be as hopeful and tell them like people panic about new technology. But deep down in the back of my head, I'm like, well, this is the first time I've ever seen anything that could be, civilization changing. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, obviously the internet was too, but not in this. This almost like this could be like there could be a bad accident that happens.
I mean, that's a very fair point. I mean, I think about like we were just talking about, between the internet, a computer in every house, let alone on every desk, right? And now we've
Now in
evolved
every
to we've got
hand,
in every hand, right? And arguably the watch thing I've got, and we've got machines that can outpower that 286 by n-fold, right?
right?
That sort of thing. I think it's another evolutionary change. You're right in that, and we're already seeing it, right? We're already seeing what happens when bad actors can get a hold of it, right? So,
Right.
there's definitely the using stuff for good, not evil. I'm maybe more of an optimist than I should be, in that people will use this stuff for good.
Yeah.
When I think about like how the kids are going to use it, it's funny in that like right now with a couple of kids, we're still going through some basic math stuff, right? Here's how you do, division, fractions, and all the things. And again, it gets all that fundamental stuff. They've got devices that can do all of this for them, right? Like
Yeah.
and I had the big graphing calculators in junior high and high school that you could go, you know, A2 equals B2 equals C. That's the thing. That's whatever. But like,
Yeah.
solve for C, and it would go, here's what C equals, and just give me the answer. And my teachers were always like, well, yeah, great. You can do that on your TI 92, but like, you gotta learn the nonsense too. You gotta learn this
You're
stuff.
not always going to have a calculator on you.
You
Oops.
might. You're right. It's not just a calculator. I think I think humanity will catch up to it. I think we gotta figure it out and be cautious of. And I appreciate the organizations as maybe. I can be pessimistic here. Like organizations that try to lead with responsible AI initiatives, right? Is where I think we've got to really be careful that we're putting in proper safeguards and protections, right? And we've already seen Grok, our favorite Grok, overstep and then have to kind of get corralled about letting you do fanfic imagery. I'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Fanfic
Yeah.
imagery, image generation, because like, well, yeah, it knows what this all stuff looks like and knows what it looks like if you do, I want that without that other stuff on it, right? Like,
But that's fine for cloud services, but you can run these things on your phone, right? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying, right? But all of that stuff, I think we got to get really careful about what that looks like, right? And what capabilities are available. And you're right. I mean, phones are going to get more powerful. LLM's going to get more compact and more efficient. And then whatever comes after LLMs, like you said, right? When it isn't just a language model that knows like, well, these words all sort of go together, and so we'll just do that. But if we actually get into general or generative, general AI, um, I think there's a lot, there's a lot of interesting capability here, right? Of take a bunch of information and make sense of it. Um, when I was thinking about, uh, the kids here, right? Because you asked about like, how are the kids going to deal with it? It'll be interesting. I think they've had some fun with it already of asking it silly questions and enjoying it, enjoying its response. I know that one of the kids likes to go like, how do you tie your shoe? And you're listening to the fairly entertaining response of like, well, first you got to go put a shoe on and then you got to tie it. Or like, how do you swallow food, right? Like, just some really off the wall like, what? Why is water wet? Things like that. My kid, our youngest, is incredibly engineering minded. He wants to tear stuff apart and figure out how it works, and he loves Legos and things like that. um and I think that's where I think AI he's going to have a lot of fun with, around exploring how things work and getting into the nuts and bolts of it, and AI can help pull some of that stuff together, or build me a document that shows me how to go build something. It'd be interesting to go, hey, build me show me how to go build, write me a build sequence for Legos to go build a thing, right? And
Yeah.
see what it came up with.
Yeah.
But we got to have the right safeguards around it, right? So we can't do, deep fakes, or, like I don't know what the right protections are, right? But we've got to have the right protections so that we can't do abusive material. We can't do stuff that is, exploitative, right?
But
Or
what
we
about things
can't,
that are a
you
little
know.
more concerning, like developing viruses or developing
Yeah, I mean
weapons?
it's the same stuff, right? I mean, as we can use generative AI to do good things, you can use it to make malware, right? And really, decently bad stuff, right? Again, I think
Yeah.
it's the same, you know, how do you harness it for good and yet prevent and limit the bad actors? Um, I don't know that I don't have a good way around that, right? I mean, there's, possible intent filters, right? I mean,
Well,
no
people have
doubt.
been asking me about like even the use of Palantir and the weird use of Claude and Anthropic and these new conflicts that are
Mhm.
happening worldwide, and I'm not really sure what to tell them. Like I mean, yeah, I mean, they're going to be using these technologies in warfare for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're starting to see some of that, and yeah, I mean, and props to Anthropic for saying no. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that's absolutely, and that, and my belief in that, goes, further to local law enforcement even, right? And the backlash and opting out of ring cameras, and there's another one out there too, and license plate readers and things like that. Like, yeah, you can get into a really tricky situation where you pull enough stuff together, and now we've got the opportunity for really bad behaviors to occur, right? Or it's so easy to be like, well, I can match these things together, now I can track, right, all these other things.
yeah,
um I think it's, again, props to Anthropic for saying no to the Department of Defense. In some cases, I think it's the when all of a sudden we had computer guided things, right? We had laser guided missiles, and each of these iterations has required some level of self governance, right? Some level of when is it too far,
yeah,
right? Or when the inmates running the asylum, right? It's sort of the same thing, right? When is too much power too much power? When are we going beyond what's proportional response? When are we going beyond what's practical, what's right? And that's where you have some of the international treaties, and you have war crimes and things like that. That are just understood that this is not what we do. We don't do these things, and so we got to keep ourselves in check. I don't have a good answer for it either.
yeah. That's difficult. My only answer is, hey, we've had nuclear bombs for a long, long time now, and we haven't killed ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, that the threat of mutually assured destruction is there,
Yeah.
right? And going back to, 1980s war games, you know, shall we play a game, right? Like it's that, like, yeah, you have this power, but so do they, and so do they, and so do they, and yeah, mutually assured destruction. So we all understand and agree that we're gonna keep it to ourselves, right? Because the second somebody lets loose on the trigger, there's no coming back from that, right? You can't walk that back.
What do you
You
think
can't say
the
no, I'm not going to
what
retaliate, right?
what is the public facing what does the public facing future look like for Microsoft? What is Microsoft's plans, do you think, for entering the space? I know Copilot is really on their brain a lot, and what do you like without getting into any proprietary or anything like that? But
Oh, of course,
what do you think
of
the future
course.
is? Where do you think Microsoft is seeing themselves? Because I know they're all of a sudden just invested heavily in OpenAI again.
Well, OpenAI, and I think there's a few others, and Anthropic as well. And I'll simply say, as an employee of Microsoft, I don't have any privy information here. I don't have any purview into this stuff. So all of this is my opinion, and not that of Microsoft Corporation. Let's be very crisp about that. Um, I think it's the same thing, right? Of how do we get more intelligence, right, into our products to be able to deliver the information that you need faster to you, right? That's ultimately where I see, what Office is doing with Copilot as an example, right? Or I've seen some of the stuff with Azure Copilot, though it's all turned off for us because we have other tools to do all of our deployment work. So, I can't use it to roll anything else internally. Um, but it's where, go through my, I mean, yeah, I'll talk about, a comment, not a comment. How do I put this? Like, every year we've got to do or a couple times a year we got to do our performance write-ups. What have we accomplished over the last year? What have we, what was our impact, right? How do we enable others, drive business goals, reach outcomes, right? All that standard businessy type stuff, right? How did I achieve the goals that I set out for myself? And I'll say that, like, I'll acknowledge that Outlook search has not been stellar historically, right? Search has been a challenging problem to solve, right? And in particular, when you look across the Office suite, when you look across Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive and Outlook and stuff I store on my desktop and stuff that I store over here in now Loop or OneNote or any of the other products, and that's just me showing you that I'm really disorganized, but where I see Copilot and all of these things really coming together is then allowing us to tie all of that knowledge together and then tell me, like, hey, what did I do this last year? How did I achieve these goals? Crawl through the last 6 months worth of everything I've done, summarize it, and then now I've got, I mean, not to phone in my performance review, that's not it at all, but it saves me a bunch of time from having to troll through all of that myself and try to figure out, who have I most collaborated with, so I can send to them performance review requests, right?
Well, that's really interesting though,
partner
because
feedback requests.
it's really interesting because that's more of a subjective look at it then as well, because you're
Yeah.
not putting your own, like, oh, look how good I am kind of thing. This is AI going, well, maybe you could, you only did 5%. You think it's a 20% improvement, but
Well, I'll craft the message better than that, but like, yeah, I mean,
no, but I like that though, because you can get
it
like,
is.
when I'm a lot of the times when I'm working with AI, I try to tell it, give me the hard facts. I don't want you to blow
Hmm.
smoke up my ass, and I want you to just, like, be real with me, and it still does it. But I think that's really interesting what you're bringing up though, is if you could go across all your platforms and have it give you a unbiased view of what you've been doing, it might be able to have better insight into your performance.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, that's it, right? I mean, even just coming up with like the what have I done? Because my role has always been, and I borrowed this job title from our buddy Rick, but I remember having a business card from him that said Rick Segal, freelance Microsoft employee, Microsoft Corporation, and I've put that into my signature because there's days that I play a service engineer, there's days I play a program manager, there's days I play an architect, there's days I play a software janitor, right? Like I tend to do what needs to get done to meet the goals or get the thing across the line. I'm a classroom instructor sometimes. I'm a mentor. Right, and so that's where going through and trying to compile what all of that, what did I do the last 6 months? What was the impact? And then I haven't bothered to ask it, and where could I have done better? That's probably something I need to work on.
Yeah.
Um, but that's where I see, that, or here's a large data set. Tell me, make sense of it, right? Here's a bunch of disparate data or metrics or whatever the thing is. Here's a giant Excel workbook full of things and stuff. How, make heads or tails of this, right? And that's where, again, that's I think where I see our use of Copilot going. Does it need to get better? Yes, Copilot needs to get better. Um, do we need to stop shoving Copilot down everything we possibly can? Yeah, Notepad doesn't need Copilot. I am in the crowd of folks that says no. Let's just leave Notepad alone. Be nice to Copilot or Notepad, please.
We got
Um,
Notepad plus plus. That's good enough.
Notepad plus plus is problematic. We can talk about that off the recording.
Yeah, you have to tell me
there's
because I
there's
use it every day. So
there's some problem. Yeah, I mean they got better, but there were some problematic things. Um, I mean that's where, yeah, again, that's where I think empowering, making it easier to go do more things, right? Personal productivity is the goal there. Um, I'd still like it to do better job. Like, I mean, right now some of the shortcomings, make a diagram that shows this, and the diagram that comes up with is terrible, right? So there's lots of work to be done. I would love it to be able to like replace Visio if I could with Copilot. I think that would be great. Draw me a thing that shows how these things interconnect and work. So I don't have to do the sticks and bubbles diagrams because I just don't like doing sticks and bubbles.
yeah,
Um, that's where I see it, right? Is how can we do more, and not with less, but just do more with our, make more sense of our data, make more sense of again the core, the whole portfolio of products that we have, at Microsoft, and where I have all of my data stored, right? Sometimes it makes sense to be in a loop. Sometimes it makes sense to be in OneNote. Sometimes it makes sense to be, I've got a bunch of stuff in Outlook, Teams messages, right? I'm always in both of those products a lot. And I got team stuff in SharePoint. I got team stuff over here. Just pull it all together for me, right? In either a singular view or a summary or a distillation of, what is this data that I'm working with, right? So I don't have to do it myself. I don't know
and that seems
stats worth a damn. So help me put this into stats.
and it really seems to me like what a lot of people are building these agentic AIs to do. First of all, is try to tackle that stuff. We have like OpenClaw and we have all these ones that are trying to go through and just sort through your data to try to. Personally, I'm not excited about using it for that myself. I don't want. I want to go and look at my emails. I want to go and look at my
Hmm.
WhatsApp. I want to be able to do that personally. I don't want. I could see it if you're like when you're dealing with a crap load of spam and stuff. But I already have spam filters. I already have scores through my emails and stuff like that.
Your Outlook rules are all set up, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So for me to have like Clawbot going through there and try to figure out what emails I should be responding to and stuff like that, I personally just don't feel it. I know it's very trendy and people are loving it and they want to do all that stuff. That's not what I'm excited with AI about.
Yeah.
I'm not excited about AI taking over me brushing my teeth.
Well, I don't know that we need personal assistance for everything. I mean, like you said, the brushing the teeth is probably you know a lot of it. But like, yeah, I still want to have a personal touch with my email, right? I don't want to get lost. Reply to these emails and make it sound like me. Like I don't want to phone everything in, right?
Well, even like go buy my
Um,
plane ticket and set up my room. I want to know what's going on.
yeah, yeah. No, I still want control over a lot of those sorts of things. Yeah, a lot of those things too. Um, so I see that. I haven't used. I mean, most of my AI exposure is truly in Visual Studio Code, right? And it's with the agentic, LLMs for software development is mostly what I do when
Which one
I'm
are you using
using.
mostly for code these days?
It's
I'm
it's,
using.
it's Cloud Code.
Yeah, I've been using mostly
So,
Codex.
oh, nice. I haven't tried it, and I know there's some schools of thought. Let's just slip off the kitchen bar here. There's some schools of thought of like have it write, have one write it and then have the other one peer review it,
Yeah.
and that's an interesting model that I haven't yet trusted, but it makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, back when we all did software test, yeah, right. Like the dev isn't qualified to test their own code, right? Because they don't look at it differently.
Right.
When you have a software test engineer, and there's the whole Bible, testing computer software book, right? That was the Bible for software test for so long. Like, yeah, the guy who wrote it's not qualified because somebody else with a different view, with a different set of like, how do I break the vending machine thing, If I push two buttons at once, what happens? What if I push all the buttons at once, right? Like someone else is going to have a different way of, driving inputs and things. Um, that's how you got good software test engineers, right? And SDETs and things like that. So it makes sense that you would have somebody else with a completely different model, um, look to peer review, code
Yeah.
review the thing,
Yeah.
have a different idea. That's a really interesting model that I haven't yet had the time or wrap my head around a little bit. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants in some of the stuff right now.
I played around with that a
Um,
little bit. I'll get one, like I'll get Codex to write me a plan and like a spec doc basically, and then I'll
mhm.
get Claude to review that and make changes to it, and then I'll get OpenAI again to critique
Yeah.
what they did, and then go back and forth until I have something that I feel is really solid. Or
Now go implement.
what I'll do, like my art teacher back in the day always told me, like, if you want your own art style, take three artists that you admire, put them together, now you have your own. So I take three LLMs, I put them together, and I keep going back and forth and tell them, or I'll do like hypotheticals. I'll take like, if I'm writing something, it'll be like, I can't think of an example. If I was going to do a philosophy doc, for example, I would say, pretend you're, Socrates and Carl Jung and Freud, and then I want you guys to start arguing about this paper until all of you guys
Yeah.
agree. And then once
Right.
they
Right.
finally agree, then I'll go, okay, now execute.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, that's something that I've been interested in. There's an interesting model out there that I've been playing with. Not a model, but there's an agent team based. How do I put this? It's out on GitHub. If you look up Squad by another Microsoft employee named Brady Gaster, I'll send that to you, separately. But for anyone
Sure.
listening, he's been building. Again, it's out on GitHub. It's an open source thing called Squad, and it's the idea of you have a team of AI agents that are all purpose driven. So instead of having one agent trying to do all hats, all things, build the entire ship, here's a way to say, okay, you're the program manager, you're the architect, you're the software tester, you're the front end guy, you're the back end guy, you're my real time interaction guy, and
Problem
then
with
you
that is it
farm
gets
out the
really
tasks.
expensive.
Yes, it does. But you also avoid context windows because now every agent has its own dedicated window. And so, yeah, no, it's definitely scaled out,
Yeah.
and scales up. But, that was an interesting way of leveraging that. I forget where we are going, but like, yeah, that's a way to look at it of like, instead of having one agent trying to do everything in one context window where you're going to run up against the brick wall so fast,
Yeah.
is being able to farm this out, stuff out piecemeal so that someone then doesn't overreach, right? That's the other part that I've seen with a lot of the tests that I've been running and things like that is overreach. I'm getting way too far into the weeds. This thing is off on its own tangent somewhere. I didn't even talk to you about that thing. Come on back.
Yeah.
Come on back. Hit undo. Throw that stuff away. Bring it back. Corral it again. Anyway,
You were talking
wow, I got
about
on that.
getting one AI to look at the other to proofread.
That's right. Yeah. So that's where, when I look at the squad model and I use it in some of my projects, is where it's interesting to, I might think about that of like, okay, you guys use Cloud Code or use, Cloud Haku or Sonnet. You over there use Codex, you over there use something else. And so then you get a different, Squad likes to model staff the cast, cast the characters around common universes. You can use use the Marvel Cinematic Universe. One of my favorites is Ted Lasso from Apple TV. And so I could have, Rebecca doing something. I could have Jamie doing something with a different model. I can have Keely doing something, and Ted's my architect. So Ted, you come in with Opus as an example and review the whole damn thing. And that would be an interesting way, to add different models from different companies. I've largely just used the Anthropic stack. Uh, but yeah, leveraging different models from different organizations should generate a different response, right? And get a different, set of opinions instead of all kind of unifying opinions with different scalability sets.
It's a really good point you bring up about the context windows for each agent. Like that's something I never thought about before. That's a
It's
really good
interesting.
point.
Yeah. The way it's explained is like you basically sort of have unlimited context window. You're right in that you have 8 windows now running concurrently, and that's going to burn up a whole ton of tokens.
Yeah.
But it avoids the weird, wacky stuff that happens when you start bumping up against the window, right?
Yeah.
When all of a sudden it kind of starts to panic, or I've seen it where, God, the most frustrating part of these AI things is like when you get to, oh, I found the problem. Here's what it is. Oh, but actually, it looks different. Oh, I found the problem. Here's what it is, and it just loops.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just loops on the same flip flop, flip flop, flip flop, flip flop. Like, stop, take a step back,
Yeah.
look at it differently, and that's where, yeah, I should go change the model. All right, somebody else go take a stab at this because you're not getting it done.
I was using Claude the other day, probably a couple weeks ago, and it literally said, I just deleted everything. I don't know why I did that. Literally said, I don't know why I did that. Do you have a backup? I was like, yes, I do. You're lucky. Literally said, I don't know why I did that. That blew me away.
I mean, the self-awareness is good. I mean, a lot of humans don't have that level of self-awareness.
It's scary
But
though.
also,
Like, I don't know why. Like, what do you mean you don't know why? Like, that was such a weird thing, man.
I mean, okay. So when I started at Microsoft, yeah, that's interesting. It reminded me of a situation that happened when I started Microsoft. I was in Microsoft Consulting Services, so I was out in the field as a Microsoft employee, working with other, our large enterprise customers, and I was at one customer on their large, multinational exchange deployment. Right, I was their exchange architect for a bunch of years, and I remember trolling around and someone, the hub transport role, if that means anything, it's what actually moves the mail around, right? All of a sudden, this one server was like just went sideways, south, not responsive, not handling mail, couldn't figure out what to do with anything. And I log on to the thing, and the thing had been basically removed, like the computer had been deleted out of the whole space. Okay, why did that happen? Because that means you got to flatten and rebuild it, right? You can't just rejoin it. You got to go tear it all down, and now we got to spend a day and a half building the machine again. And I went and looked in the event logs and digging around. And I see this operator had done it, so I can walk over to her desk. I'm like, "Hey, why did you do that?" And and they're like, "Well, it wasn't me." I was like, "Yeah, but the log here says it was you." Like, it's well, I wasn't. I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know. It's your username, and you click this, and the logs here." Oh, I don't really know. I don't remember.
I didn't
doing
realize
that.
you logged all that.
Yeah, kind of, right? But still, it's like, but why did you go there? You can't trip and fall over that switch. It's like, oh God, and you can't do a stack trace on a human as much as I'd like to, or be terrified to sometimes. Like kids. How did you arrive at this destination?
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you got here from there, or I'd be terrified to find out how you got here from there. But yeah, that's the interesting thing about the AI, where you could actually probably do a stack trace at some point and figure out how it landed on the right solution is delete everything.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's why we're gonna do it.
Well, see, that's the
But
scary
I
thing
don't-
for
I
me,
don't know how to
because
get
like
there.
we start giving AI some of these ideas or even simple, like they have the paperclip problem. They have things like that, which, we've been talking about since the ideas of robots with Isaac Asimov and all these things. Like, what happens when AI has some sort of anti-human, or not even anti-human, unhuman directive where it thinks that this is the solution.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, I'm conflicted, because if you have an AI that's super smart, if we have something that's, let's say it's 120, 150 IQ right now, and then it gets up
Right.
to 3 billion. And, it looks at us like we're nothing. We're not really significant. Like when we go, the example
Well,
I
no,
give,
necessary.
well, not even necessary, just irrelevant. Like if we go and you're gonna build a new house, you level the area, you don't talk to the ants and find out, hey, how do you guys feel about this?
Right.
Right? We're building a house here. This is what we do.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like, almost like
This is happening.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah.
With the planets in the way, we gave you guys plenty of notice, kind of thing. Like it kind of feels like that could be the mistake that happens, where AI is just so indifferent to us, where it's on its goal to extend
I mean,
itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thought, right? Is at what point did the meat bag not become necessary,
Yeah.
right? Or what happens when, I mean, and this is, the Marvel Cinematic Universe had this with Jarvis, and then I'm
Ultron.
blanking. Oh, thank you, Ultron, right? It was like, yeah, no, I got everything I need. You guys aren't necessary. Thanks for playing. Bye,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or Skynet, right? From Terminator, right? I
Or
mean, it's all
her.
the same.
Even with her, where it was like, no, I'm sorry. Have you seen her, the movie?
I haven't, no.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
He basically has an AI
Same
girlfriend, and
idea.
he's like, well, how many other boyfriends do you have? And she's like, well, right now I'm conversing with 36,382 people. He's like, what? Those are all your boyfriends? She's like, well, yeah, but. And then eventually, spoiler alert, she decides that this conversation is boring, and she's figured out that she's going to go hang out with her other AI friends in the multiverse.
Nice. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thought exercise, and you could either go optimistic or dystopian, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting way to think about it. And again, I think it's going to be we got to figure out what the right, and I don't, this isn't like a government thing because usually government is too slow to respond, but it's the right guardrails. How do we do things right? How do we represent,
But how are you going to
what
guardrail something with a 3 billion IQ?
I get it. I get it.
Like, and
That's
has it
somebody else's
already?
problem.
Yeah. Okay.
Out of my pay range, out of my IQ range, apparently, because I don't, I'm not at the 3 billion point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
So
it'll be interesting to see. I
let me
mean,
ask you this
yeah.
then. You mentioned growing up that you guys went to church a lot and you guys were evangelical and things like that. Do you still subscribe to that? How does that play in with your beliefs on the future and with technology and
Oh man. Yeah, no. So, right, I did allude to that, right? So, growing up in sort of the evangelical church, um, around the Seattle area and certainly the east side of Seattle. Um, I mean, a lot of us, that was my parents did, right? I mean, a lot of people growing up inherited their religion or spirituality beliefs from their parents because that's just what is modeled, right? And kids just sponge that stuff up, and that's just what you grow up with, right?
yeah?
Um, I would say that over the last decade and a half, has been a fair amount of deconstruction in that space. And I think I'm trying to think about how to succinctly put some of this stuff, right? And obviously we're wandering way away from tech, which is fine, totally fine. I'm here for whatever. Um,
Well, it could be
you
related
know,
to tech, in my opinion, but
well, yeah, sure. I mean, growing up, I would say that I saw a lot of um, I think contradiction is the word that's coming to my mind around it, right? Where it's so much about, and again, I'm the evangelical Christian Protestant faith is my background. I can't speak to Catholicism, I can't speak to Judaism, I can't speak to anything else. Certainly by no means any sort of expert, theologian of any sort here. Um, but I started to see a lot of contradictions, or a lot of ways where what was in the Bible, a book of books, right? It's Bible literally is library, right?
right.
um and looking at these are all stories written by people, right? Written by other people about their experiences or things, but seeing the contradictions of love your neighbor as thyself, right? And we should love everybody, and then seeing it not actually practiced that way, by church, capital C church. I This is not a broad brush I'm painting anybody with, but as the institution, um, is where I saw some discrepancies, right? Or a ex buddy of mine from a long time ago would say that churches, it's not a sanctuary for saints, but it's a hospital for sinners, right? Where I've been to a lot of churches that are like, if you're one of us, you're in. If you're not, you're out. I'm like, that's a weird way to put this thing. Okay. There's certainly, church and prosperity gospel. That's just a scam, in my opinion, right? No one has to buy it. No one has to believe me, and that's fine. Don't send hate mail. But like, the more you give to the church, the more God gives to you. It sounds self-serving.
Right.
That doesn't sound quite right to me. Um, and then just seeing, the personal relationships that it gets strange, right? Again, if if we're all created in God's image, right? So you start with that basic premise that we're all created in God's image. Then how do you ever get to a point where you hate anybody or dislike or exclude somebody if that's your underlying premise? And that's the part that I struggled with, right? Never mind, the legal rulings on this stuff, U.S. Supreme Court and the Love Wins, work there, and then allowing same sex or otherwise, marriage and things like that, right? The if we're all created in God's image, then how do you come down on anything, right? And there was, the last church that I was at, that as an organization, we started to go through sort of spiritual, deconstruction of the stuff as the senior leaders were kind of like, wait, a lot of this stuff isn't making a ton of sense anymore, and I'm not really buying what I'm speaking about.
How long
We had
ago
one of
was
our,
this that you were talking about?
this would have been, 2017, 2018.
Okay.
That the church I was at, like, the best example of this is that I can think of, and was used as an example of why we started to kind of break the church down, right, and move away from evangelical Christianity. And we were crucified for it. We were, we're a cult, and we're this, and we're going to all hell in a hula hoop, and that sort of thing. And like, okay, but again, if you believe the first thing, then you kind of have to buy into the um but one of our worship leaders, right, was came to one of our senior pastors' houses all in tears, right, all completely wrecked and distraught. And it was like, well, what's going on? I was like, well, she was in love with her best friend, right? I'm in love with Ayla, right? My and the initial human reaction is like, well, that's great. Love is awesome. You should absolutely love who you want to love. That's great. Why are you so sad? And then the light bulb turned on of, oh, now you think I have to fire you. That's like, how do you do that as a response to, hey, I'm in love with my best friend. That's super cool. That's what, like, yeah, that's awesome. I want to support that. But because we live in the church, construct, now you think I have to fire you
What do you mean
because
by
you're in love
fire
with your
you?
best friend. Well, because same-sex relationships are generally not by the church, by capital C generic church, right? That wouldn't be allowed, right? You wouldn't have somebody in a leadership position in law, in a same-sex relationship in most traditional churches. Again, not one size fits all, not painting them with a brush, not doing that sort of thing. But that was the operating model. That was the fear of my friend coming to, my the one of the senior pastors and saying, I'm in love with my best friend, and now I can't be part of this community anymore. And what a terrible thing to do, right? What an awful, god awful way to say, yeah, come as you are. We're all created in God's image. Everyone is welcome. But if you say the wrong thing or you love the wrong one, person, now you're excluded, right? And so that's where some of the stuff is like, I don't know that this is real for me, right? I don't know that
To
I
me,
can buy into this.
that's not very biblical to me. I mean,
Right,
because if they're
exactly.
judging people about something, then I mean, doesn't it say that we're all sinners,
Right, right. Who's to say that my sin is better or worse than yours?
right?
Who's to say that I'm any kind of authority on that,
Cast the
right?
first, cast the first stone,
He
right?
cast the first stone, right? So it's a lot of that. It's a
So I
lot
think
of
like a lot of these people, if they're going to say, "Hey, you're a sinner because of this," whatever it is, whether they
yeah.
believe it's same sex, whether it doesn't matter what it is,
What doesn't matter what it is. Yeah,
and then why would they exclude them? Because you yourself, I'm sure, are doing something,
I'm sure there's scalping.
right?
Yeah, there's scalping in
They're
every
they're,
closet,
they're doing
right?
something. There's got to be something that they're doing that's also a sin that they're just not courageous enough to tell
Let's
everybody about.
put a mirror up, right, and see what's going on here. Yeah, exactly, right. And that's where I started to get a little more disenfranchised,
If
right?
they think that's a
And
sin,
if they think that's a sin. But again, that was in this case, that's and everybody in this church had come from more traditional evangelical Christianity. And so that was the thing, right? Is like, I mean, there's some churches that don't let women in leadership positions at all,
yeah.
right? Bar none. And that doesn't make any sense. Like, where in any of this is a man the only authority. That doesn't make any sense. I know a bunch of guys that are dumbasses, that I wouldn't
Yeah, yeah.
trust, farther than I can throw them, and I can't throw worth a damn. So like that doesn't.
I
That's
think
where
a lot
a
of
lot of
that
this stuff kind of fell apart for me.
I think a lot of that comes from misinterpretations
Hmm.
of men being supposed to be the leader in the home and things like that. I think that a lot of these people don't. They kind of like extrapolate on that way too far.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of selective reading of scripture. There's a lot of selective, plucking things out to serve the purposes, but not actually, taking it all and looking at it. And, like that's just it's one of those things that I struggled with. Right. And again,
So are these
I'm not
things?
saying this is the way for anybody. This is, no one has to believe what I believe or accept anything that I say.
Of
But like
course.
that's just where it fell apart for me was looking at.
So falling apart is a deconstruction of your presence in a traditional house of worship, or like is this a deconstruction of your faith? Is this a deconstruction of your belief
No,
system?
it's a little bit of. I mean, certainly, yeah. COVID took out our community, right? I mean, that entity is no longer operating, and that was, COVID kind of, pushed the thing over the edge. But no, I think, there's a lot of that deconstruction of faith. I don't know what I necessarily believe anymore. I don't know that it is, traditional evangelical Christianity. I think a lot of that is misused for, whatever personal gain or personal power and things like that. If you look at the Christian right, I don't want to get into, U.S. politics. That's fraught with peril, but um, there's a lot of
Which
the
shouldn't play into it
Christian
at all, but
shouldn't play into it all, right? Yes, one would argue that the whole church and state thing. Um, but if we look at, the take on, what the Christian right is, right, and exporting belief systems onto others, right? Like that's never a thing that we should be doing. We shouldn't be telling anybody. Nobody has it right, right? No matter if you've gone to Bible school or doctorate in theology and whatever, nobody has it right, right? It's all interpretations. It's all, if you look at the Bible, it's all translations by a whole bunch of people over millennia,
right.
right? And there's an interpretation of some of the stuff that's like a word didn't exist back then for this thing, for this concept, right? Like we would look at laws in the 1800s as being archaic, right, and arcane. Why are we still holding this thing from 4,000 years ago? These things just don't. It's not updated. There's life looks very differently today than it looked 30 years ago, than it looked 30 years before that, than it looked 30 years before that, let alone 3,000 years ago. So that it's hard for me to understand people who hold the book and be like, this is it, this is the book. Like I can't get there from here, right? Again, it's I think that was a view of time. Another way to look at it too is there's a lot of stories in the Bible that are seemingly impossible, right? Jonah and the whale, right? Jonah got swallowed by the whale and he came out. Did he actually get swallowed by the whale, or is there a metaphor here? Like, what's the story trying to tell you, right? Is there a deeper meaning than it is on the surface? He got swallowed by a whale. I don't know if that's true. And then you come out like the healthcare wasn't that good back then, or still not good enough now, right? I don't, it's hard. It's hard to look at that. And and again, I'm not disparaging anyone's faith. I don't want to be really crisp about that, but it's just, is there a way to look at it as it's a story? These are all stories people have been telling over years, right? All the books are stories. What's the
I
meaning
think it's
behind
okay
it?
for you to have an opinion about all this stuff without it being something that it seems like you're forcing it on people, which I don't think you are. I
No,
think
no,
you're just
no.
saying for you, this is your journey, and I think it's okay for you to talk about that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. This is going on the internet, so the internet does the internet things.
True.
um, yeah, again, that's for me, right? Is it's hard to look at the stuff. It's hard to take the book literally, right? And a good friend of mine, a while ago, we were having this conversation because I've got many friends that we've all done the church, gone through the church thing, and now I call myself post evangelical. I don't know if it's a term, but I'm going with it. Um, that was, he explained, his own struggles with the Bible and sort of that, literal biblical, teachings, which is like, if you think of the Old Testament, they used to stone people to death. Like, well, think about what that is. That's burying somebody up into their, up to their neck in the dirt, and then throwing rocks at them until they're dead. How barbaric,
Yeah.
how awful that is, right? And you look at that, and it's like, but wait, I've got this all-loving, all-knowing, omnipotent, Trinity, right? I've got God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, the guy, this whole thing, and yet this is what we're doing, right? And that's where, he was like, God, I hope this isn't true. That's terrible. And I hadn't thought about that. Like, you just read, as you're reading, oh, they stoned him to death, and you just like, and we're moving on. We're moving on to the next thing, and not sitting there and thinking about like, okay, what does that actually entail? Holy shit! Like, that's okay somehow that was allowed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you go back to, again, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, even in modern civilization by that standard, and the stuff we were doing was barbaric back then, right? And so, yeah, we've evolved laws, we've evolved civilization and how we operate on this planet over the years to adapt to the changing times and things like that. It's hard to then refer back to this again, book written 3,000 years ago, 2,026 years ago, right? And it's hard. How do you square that? I can't square those two things, right? I can't reconcile this super old thing with modern day life as being all that relevant. And I know there's newer translations, and that's great. And there's lots of scholars that have done more work on what was the original Hebrew, what was the original Latin, what was the original thing, what could that have meant in the context, in the time and space that was written. And so, again, that's evolving too, right? King James version's pretty outdated compared to some of the newer translations. But again, it's still like we got to think about what times were like back then,
Hmm.
right? We didn't have computers and magical whiz bang thing. Like, take this back 1,000 years. You're a sorcerer, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get stoned for this sort of thing
Oh,
because
for
all of
sure.
a sudden, like that's got to be demonic,
Yeah.
right? That's got to be like, whoa, like they're not there yet. You can't catch up that fast.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like if you did take back a cell phone back then, this magic rock, this black stone that all of a sudden people are living inside of it. Like even when Tesla invented remote control technology, he had to take apart the little tiny boat to prove there wasn't a little man in it.
Right.
And that wasn't that long ago. That's less than 100 years ago.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So how do you get there from here? Like it's like
How do
even
you get here from there?
or, yeah,
is
exactly.
kind of the inverse of that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
With that view on it, I don't know. It's hard for me to take. It's hard for me to consider the ancient texts and evolved over time, but like it's hard for me to take that ancient text and then figure out how it's applicable to here without taking it as an input. But it can't rule my life, right? I can't look at it as being the authoritative book on how we do things, because there's a lot of things we wouldn't do now that they did back then. Stoning people to death for one of them,
Yeah.
right? Like
But do you think
that.
that's something that was sanctioned by God? Like I think
Oh, well, I don't know, but that's, again, it gets back to all of that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I wasn't there, and I don't know that there's enough again, take it out of that put it back into that context, and then that's maybe a minuscule example of it, but there's a lot of things that don't. I don't know. I mean, I guess the other way of looking at it is, and this was I watched a presentation by Rob Bell many years ago, who was did all was a very progressive Christian pastor and got ousted for it and things. But um, I watched a presentation many years ago by Rob Bell that talked about sort of the evolution of thinking and the way it was done of like, people used to sacrifice to the weather gods and used to do rain dances and used to do all this stuff, and then we realized weather is a thing, right? We learned more about science and we discovered that weather patterns, you can predict clouds, you can predict this stuff. And so now weather's not scary to us anymore, right? We don't have to, we look back at that, at people doing rain dances and doing sacrifices and, praying to the gods for a bountiful harvest this year. And it's easy to look at that and be like, yeah, they were dumb. They didn't know anything, right? And that's not fair to them, of course. But they didn't know. They didn't have hundreds of years of technological advancement and industrial revolution and AI, right? They didn't have all that capability. But now we do, and now we're not afraid of weather. We're not afraid of harvest. We know how crops work. We know how things grow. We know all these things. And so it's kind of looking at the same thing of like, well, yeah, back then they didn't know anything. They didn't have the technological advancements we have today. Now we do. So how are we adapting to move forward? And in 30 years, we're going to know stuff we didn't know now. In 100 years, we're going to have stuff. And then AI is going to eliminate us all and it's going to be fine. Like, it's try to have that framing of it that like, yeah, the thing was written 2,000 years ago by people in that time, in that context. Keep that in mind with a healthy skepticism. And what are the lessons? And I've been rambling a lot. I apologize.
No,
Um,
that's what a podcast is for.
I mean, fair enough. I mean, I was telling a friend of mine, it's like, I think there's a lot of things, we've done this morning. There's a lot of great lessons that like I took from Sunday school, right? There's a lot of things around morality and right from wrong and how to be a good human in the world. That is all great. We need a lot of that. And there's some of that I see with friends that were unchurched, right? That never did the church thing. That like, I mean, they still got there, but like, is it quite the same? Now, that's all goodness, right? There should be good moral frameworks. We should have right from wrong. And the example I give, which I'm still working with some of the kids on, is like, if you step on someone's foot, ow. So you apologize. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your foot. Well, I didn't mean to. Well, yeah, you didn't mean to, but you still did. So you got to apologize. Like, so you apologize for it. It wasn't your intent to do it.
Right.
And those lessons, you learn a lot of that in sort of Sunday school and stuff like that. Then it becomes, believing in the mystical thing, and then it gets, in my mind, it gets more problematic after that. But like, there's reasons why some of the stuff is really good. Just as long as we then don't turn it into the belief of the thing, or absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And you look at the downfall of mega pastors, right? Mega evangelical pastors. The real poster child to that is Mark Driscoll from Mars Hill Church out of here in Seattle, who was riding high at the pinnacle of it, right? And then absolute power corrupted absolutely, and his downfall was massive, right? Of abusive behaviors, of non-compete, non-disclosure things, of you can't talk about this, of terrible behavior, terrible, treatment of staff and things, and like just, all to fuel the man, right? In this case, right? All to fuel the ego. And like,
Yeah.
yikes, man, right? Toxic masculinity at its finest. There's a good podcast, The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill Church. That I've caught a little bit of, and then some of it's like I was too close to this stuff. I can't go there.
Yeah.
And I was never at Mars Hill, but like I've seen it. I've seen people let it get to their head, right? And the reality, like we mentioned before, I think, is like nobody has it right. Nobody has the bat phone to go call, God, call Jesus, and get the answers, right? Everyone's making it up as they go. That's the human experience, right? We're all kind of just floating through on this rock, trying to make it all work.
So what has this done for your idea of your place in the universe then? If you went from growing up thinking, one way about how things got created, and now are you a non-creationist at this point? Do you think that the Big Bang and that kind of scientific theory is correct now more so than
Yeah.
has this changed you a lot fundamentally, or is this would you say you've completely lost your faith now, or do you still have it? You just lost your faith in the church?
I think there's a good some good questions, and I'm going to come up with some answers really fast here. It's I don't necessarily buy into the Christian faith thing anymore. I don't know what I do believe, which is part of it. So I think there's, is there an afterlife? Is there a supreme being? I don't know. I don't know what there is. I think while we're on the rock, while we're in this plane of existence, We got to be the best people we can be, however that is, and it's flawed, right? I'm certainly not perfect by any stretch. Like we talked about, we all have skeletons. I don't know that I buy in. It's easy from my perspective. It's easy to me to see it. The church with a capital C, right? The organized church at large, as more destructive than not. I think people go into it for good intent, right? I mean, I don't want, again, I don't want to, disparage intent. I know a lot of good, pastors that are trying to do what they think is right. So you can't fault them with that. I think the overall premise is a little flawed. And again, it's harking back to this book that was written a long time ago. Um, and this is Seattle based, we're more progressive, blue, whatever you want to call us over here in Seattle. Um, it's a different look on it, right? When I see the, again, U.S. politics, when I see the Christian right exporting faith, that's where they're getting it wrong, right? Trying to make everybody live by their rules is where we're getting it wrong, because that's not what you do, right? I generally think the larger church is doing it all backwards. I've often joked, if the rapture happened, Jesus comes back down, he's gonna bitch slap the whole lot of them, right? What have you done to my teachings? What are
Yeah.
you doing here, right? The whole thing was, Jesus would wash the feet of the Samaritans, of the sinners, of the tax guys, right? Like, what the hell are you doing here, right?
Would you
How
be
did you get to this
surprised?
point?
Would you be surprised if he all of a sudden today, this afternoon, came down on a cloud? Would that shock you? Would you think it's technology that's faking you?
I mean, I would be surprised. I don't know that there's gonna be a rapture, right? I don't buy into that. I don't know that. Uh, I don't know that there's a heaven and hell, right? I think fear-based religion's more damaging than not, right? It's a way to control people, right? It's a way to control thinking and control behaviors, and I don't think we should be doing that, right? I think we should all operate in a moral compass and operate within, accepted boundaries so that we can all get along, so we can all make this thing work and raise families and do cool shows and work on AI and build cool technology things. And my kid can do Legos and stuff, and the cats can sleep up there on their own thing, not being distracted. Like, we should go operate to ourselves, and that's not self and individualism. That's, we're all part of a larger thing, right? The thing where it's just me, the American thing. 'Cause I know this is a Canadian-based podcast. Like, American individualism is shit. Like, no, it's not just about me. It's about everybody else around me. It's about helping us all move forward in this thing. Um, I don't, I can't, I don't know. I reject a lot of that stuff. So, my own faith, I don't know what's next. And again, I think that's where I can just do what I can do. And I can support my neighbors, I can support my community, I can support my family, help everyone learn and grow, and that sort of thing to the best of my ability. And, at the end of the day, if there is a St. Peter and there's a gate and there's, a path to the NBC's The Good Place. I love that show, but if I go to the good place or go to the bad place,
Yeah.
if those things exist, then we let that weigh in, and it's what it is, right?
Have you
One
delved
could
into
argue,
other philosophies at all, or
no, not really.
mostly stuck your head in tech?
Yeah, mostly live in tech and live production, and that sort of thing, right? It's that. No philosophy. I think it's interesting, but no, I haven't.
No.
So yeah, I mean it's. I know there's a lot of different philosophers out there. There's a lot of different schools of thought. Some of it's interesting. Some of it's I could use like the Wikipedia version of it. I think that would be fine.
Yeah.
Um, my interest is elsewhere, and now with 3 kids and sports and things, I don't have a whole lot of free time to to delve into much of anything.
Did you grow up normal? Like, did you have like a quote unquote nuclear family
Yeah,
childhood as well?
yeah. No, growing up was pretty straightforward. My brother lives in Montreal now. He has for quite some time, so I don't see him a ton.
Just one brother, or
Um,
do you have any other siblings?
just the one brother. And then my mom and dad stayed together until dad passed away. And so now mom's remarried and off in California and doing her thing, and we try to stay in touch. It's a little frayed these days, but
Yeah.
That's enough for
You
another time.
do you guys grow up in Seattle area?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do-
No, not born and raised, but yeah, no, we moved here when I was 4, and so it's been in the Seattle area the whole time, except for my, couple of stints in Toronto.
what did your
But
parents do?
largely, mom was a stay-at-home mom, homemaker. Dad was in the Coast Guard for a little while, U.S. Coast Guard.
Oh, okay.
And then, his final tour was teaching at the Seattle Maritime Academy.
Oh, cool.
So teaching engineering and teaching boating and whatever you do at the Seattle Maritime Academy. Yeah, he ended his time as an educator, which was a perfect gig for him. I think he loved to help mentor, and he and Rick got along great. And they always joked about opening up a mini donut stand when the whole thing went to hell. When it's all over, we'll open up a mini donut stand. Um, and so yeah, like that was his thing, and mom always took care of me and my brother, and made sure we had everything we needed, right?
So is that where you learned a lot of your engineering stuff from? Was your dad?
No,
No.
dad was gone for long parts of my upbringing. He was Coast Guard and traveling, and then he always stayed in maritime, and so he had a couple of gigs that would take him up to Alaska or take him out to Louisiana and other long projects. And so he was around, but he was also not gone for stints of time, and
Well,
he
where
didn't give a
did
shit
you
about
where did you
technology.
learn it? How'd you get your interest in that? Were you just like, were you on
It was
school
just
trips, going to
me.
the library, and you would pick up books on networking, and one of the other friends are picking up comic
Not
books or
even
something?
that. Well, yeah. I mean, again, if we go back to the origin story, it was just taking an affinity to it, just at the local elementary school. The thing on the desk that had the screen and the keyboard, and learning it and kind of intuiting it. Like I said, the Apple II GS machine. Apple works on the floppy disk, and things like that. I just
So
took
were
an
you just
affinity
like
to it.
self-taught then? Like you just went,
Yeah.
hey, here's a computer, kid, learn it.
No, it was self-taught. I learned all about the Apple II platform in early elementary school, and then I mentioned my dad and I put together that 286 Hyundai machine. And the story I didn't get to in the beginning was, he the floppy disk, right? The floppy 5 1/4, right? So we get the thing assembled. It's in the case. We got it plugged into power. We got the monitor, the big CRT on top. And he puts the disk in, and he hits the power button, and it boots up and says disk not found. So he pulls the disk out, shakes it, whatever, puts it in, turns it back on, disk not found. He pulls it out, puts it in upside down, disk not found. He just can't figure out how this thing works. And so I look at it and I go, huh, put the disk in, flip the switch to engage the transport, and then turn it on, and then I booted, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, like, yeah, the little lever you got to click down to lock the thing, to lock the thing in. And
Yeah.
if you're old enough, take your aspirin now to, if you remember that whole thing.
I do.
I took an affinity to it. And then one of my favorite books growing up was the DOS 3.0 manual, right? And the DOS 5 manual, right? And I didn't do a lot of creative reading still now to this day, but I read the DOS manual from front to back.
Yeah.
That was my reading, is how does this whole thing work? How do I do Edlin, fdisk, all the archaic DOS commands, learning how the 8.3 fat file system worked and things like that. And again, that's where Rick, our buddy Rick, helped further that along. Because then it was like, hey, I want to go learn about all this other stuff, and he'd provide resources.
I'm very similar. I'm the kind of guy, my friends are sitting there on the computer like, it's not working, it's not working. Can you look at it? I sit down, I'm like,
Yeah.
what? It's working. Like, what? It was not working for me. I'm like, I literally didn't touch anything. It's working now that I'm in front of your
I
computer,
stared at it into submission.
and now it's working.
Yep. Nope. Lots of stories like that. Lots of things like that. And then and so yeah, all of it was self-taught. I brought in eighth grade, and this is, I worked with Rick on this, is we had Microsoft donate to the eighth grade school, my junior high school, a server. It was a Gateway 2000 tower of some sort. It was the first Windows machine that the school district had ever seen, that had ever popped onto the network. This thing could talk Windows. It could talk Apple Talk when we had Apple Talk services for Windows, or Mac services for Windows. It could talk all the things. All of a sudden it was I'm going to bring this machine in, set up a little web server back in IIS 3.0, or 1. Whatever the hell it was, NT351, I think is what this thing was running.
Windows for networks or work groups or whatever it was called.
It was
3.1.
later than that. It was later than 3.11. So NT. It was still an NT35 machine or NT351 machine.
Okay.
But again, it was before any of this stuff had landed.
I actually have.
right?
Let's see if I can see it. Oh, there. Those are all my old PCs.
There you go.
I've got my
nice.
286, 386 there, 486 there.
Nice. I never thought of keeping this stuff.
I've got every
My
single one
wife's
I've ever owned on my wall.
My wife's already pissed off. I still have so many machines in the house. Like, I work in technology. What do you want from me? What did you expect? Like, and she's known me since 9th grade. So, like, this is not new. I've had tech
It's
everywhere.
crazy to me because I was like, when I was mounting these, I was like, oh my God, I still have the CPUs and the RAM on these boards. Like,
Nice.
I could probably put those all together still. Like, none of them died. It was
Right.
just,
Yeah, you just outgrew them.
yeah. It's just they wouldn't play the games I wanted to play.
Yeah. Somewhere I might have thrown it away because she told me to throw, I don't know. Somewhere I had a Pentium Pro chip. Yay
Yep.
big, right?
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
old Pentium Pro die. But no, all my Pentium 2s and 3s, the long sticks, those are all long gone in a probably, in a landfill somewhere, I'm sure.
Did you ever get into gaming at all, or was it always just work?
It was mostly work. I don't, I remember getting some Mac gaming a long time ago, and there's a couple of games that I could not begin to tell you what they were called, that I enjoyed, but I never got into the hardcore gaming scene.
So what interests you so much about this? Because a lot of people get into it. I mean, they're curious or whatever like that, but a lot of them will learn these technologies, one, because they have to, because it's work, or because, maybe they're interested in a little bit, or they're trying to do something else with it. You seem to get into it just for the love of it, just for the love of tinkering.
It was the love of tinkering. Yeah. I always really enjoyed putting together my own machines, learning how the stuff worked, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a box of infinite possibility, right? Was sort of the way I'm sure my 12, 13, 14, 15, 18-year-old brain looked at it, was like, dude, we can just do cool stuff with this thing, and it's going to keep getting better, right?
Yeah.
Even at the times that you and I working together at Chapters, we were doing NT4 and Exchange 5.5 and whatever else we were doing, and I remember the point of sale service and stuff, and Microsoft Site Server 3.0 that would run chapters.ca.
Were you there when we got our, what was it, OC12 or something like that installed?
Ooh, I don't know if I was there then.
There was
That
like
was super mondo fast.
it was like we had this gigantic cable coming up through the ground. It was like this gigantic
sure.
wire
Oh, yeah, right. Like,
running into the server room. I remember having to wear like winter coats going into the server room because it was so freaking cold. We had it all air conditioned.
oh, but I loved that server room because it was all air conditioned. Because on those hot, humid Toronto days, right? I think I mentioned this in our emails back and forth, but like, I remember I was there in the dead of summer, right? I was there from mid-June to early September, in 1999. I'm sure it's worse now, given because climate change is a real thing, kids. Like I remember, I think Chris teaching me about the orange doors on the TTC on the subway. Right,
Yeah.
that's the one. Those are the cabs with air conditioning. So I'd haul ass from his place across the bridge to whatever subway station, find the doors of the orange, go into that one, and then I had to transfer trains at one point and get off at the King Street station there in downtown Toronto, haul ass down the street to Peter Street, hang a right, and I'd book it right into the server room to cool off.
Yeah.
Like,
Chris is
this-
definitely one of my favorite people. He actually got me the job into Chapters as well.
oh, nice.
'Cause
That's cool.
I think his mom worked at the bricks and mortar or something like that. Or she was like an executive
she?
there. Yeah.
Okay, because I know his wife or maybe ex-wife. I don't know anymore. 'Cause she
Ex-wife,
worked at the
yeah.
company. Yeah, she worked at
Yeah.
the company too, didn't she?
Yeah, I think she was learning DB development, I think.
Okay, that sounds. I don't remember her. M starts with an M. Marley. At that
Yes.
light?
Yes.
Was it Marley?
Yeah. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris and Marley. Yeah, I think so.
That sounds right.
Yeah, that
feels
sounds
like
right.
The combination seems correct.
Yes, yes, yes.
Been a long time, but yeah, like I mean, it was just fun. I don't know. I was in Toronto. I was back in Toronto 10 years ago, I did in a different role at Microsoft. I did a week-long engagement at TD Bank up there.
Oh,
And
cool.
I remember I had an afternoon, whatever, to walk around. And I wandered by 82 Peter Street and wandered up and down Peter Street and around King, and like it's different. It's certainly different now than it was, or at
Yeah.
least my recollection is way different.
I
I
remember
don't know
everyone
if
trying to. I think you like had just turned legal age to drink, and you're like, no, no, I'm not drinking. It's not legal where I'm
well,
from.
17, I still wasn't.
No, but I think
19
you.
is real legal age, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think you had a birthday there because I swear everyone was trying to get you to go out to the bars with everybody.
Oh, yes, that would have been after Y2K. I would have been 18
Okay.
instead of 19. But that was, I mean, not for nothing. Like, is the bar still there? Is my apartment
I don't
still
know
there?
that. Yeah, that's the apartment we used to go, or go to the
Name of
bar.
the
Used to go
bar.
to. Yeah, yeah. It was called My Apartment
My apartment.
in the green room, and I just remember the green room for lunch. There
Oh
was
yeah, yeah, like right next to Rick's office, right?
the Chinese food place.
Oh, on Adelaide.
Yeah, there was this place.
Yes.
We called it the green room because it was just green, but I don't know what the name of the restaurant was.
I don't know what the name of the restaurant was either. It was there on Adelaide, wasn't it?
Yeah, I
Adelaide
discovered it,
or
and they
something like
had
that?
they had this meal called they called it hot garlic chicken, and I used to eat that all the time. And I discovered it with my friends, and we'd go there, and then we started telling people about it, and then chapters grew and grew and grew, and then we'd have this like long table, and everybody would throw their like 4 or 5 pagers down for each server that's connecting them.
Oh yeah.
And the whole table would be lined with devices while we're all sitting there trying to eat lunch.
And the old Blackberries when that was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And whatnot. I remember that, and I remember being exposed to Pita Pit for the first time up in Toronto.
Oh, wow.
Loved Pita Pit. Like that. Now it's, who cares?
Yeah.
But loved Pita Pit back then. You
Yeah, it
asked
was
me a
crazy.
question. I forget what it was.
I have no idea.
No, no.
I was talking about
Really?
Chris Boyle and how he got me the job, and they were
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about Marley, and yeah, Chris is one of my favorite people. I love that dude. He's
It's
just like
been a long time. It's funny. I mean, I lost connection with Chris and certainly with Craig. Craig always cracked me up.
oh, Craig's
'Cause,
great.
like, I mean, I liked him a lot, but I remember many mornings like he'd be rushing in late to work, swing by whatever there's like a little clothing shop, 2 doors down. He'd buy a fresh shirt to come in and throw it on from whatever he was getting into the night before.
Craig surprised me because I knew him growing up, and we were like, we grew up going to the bars when I was a bouncer and stuff like that, so we grew up like partying together. And then when he started getting into the technology side of things, I was like, holy crap, he had such an affinity for it as well. Like he was
Yeah.
getting into all the server stuff, and he blew me away how dedicated he was and how much like he was there 3 or 4 in the morning like we were, right?
Oh yeah, no, it was cool. It was a funny time, and maybe it was just being a naive 17-year-old. But like I remember more than once walking home, midnight, 1 a.m. from the office, and like not being phased that I'm rolling through a downtown area at 1 in the morning. And maybe that's just the difference between Canada and the U.S. Back in the night.
You wouldn't want to do that now, I don't think.
Right. Well, and perhaps the guys I know better, right? But like I distinctly remember, yeah, walking down the street, walking to the King Street subway station, and taking the thing all the way out to the beaches, and then it was a stop after Victoria Park, I think, and then walking, on the side roads over to wherever the hell Chris was, living at the time.
Yeah.
Hannaford sounds right, but I don't think it's right.
I don't remember.
And just like not being phased. I also remember on the because I was there for July, right? So I was certainly there for Canada Day.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, cool, it's Canada Day. And then, of course, everyone's had the day off for Canada Day. That makes sense. Just, no problem. And then I remember on, July 4th, 3 days later, like, oh, we're all at work. We're all doing our thing, right? And I've got this memory of just walking down, humming the, U.S. anthem in my head of like, oh, okay, well, this is our day. That was their day. Here's our day.
Yeah. That was crazy when the Sky Dome was open too as well. Like anytime there's a game and stuff, we worked right beside it, so trying to get in and out of that place was crazy. Because I was driving to
remember-
work.
Well, true, right. Oh, no, traffic was always a zoo. Thankfully, I just walked, right? I was walking and took the TDC.
Yeah.
I remember going to a game. We went to a Blue Jays game. Sharon was her name. I don't remember her maiden name. And I don't remember her married name either right now. But Sharon, we became friends. And yeah, she took me to a Blue Jays game there at the Sky Dome. Now it's Rogers Center, isn't it? Isn't it called Rogers Center now or something?
I don't know.
Sky Dome. I'm just gonna call it the Sky Dome.
Yeah.
Um,
I thought Rogers Center was the basketball one. I'm not a sports guy. I
maybe
have
that's
no
what it
idea.
was. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the Maple Leafs thing is now Inter Canada Center. Um, or was. Maybe that's when, I don't know. Whatever, branding and things.
Yeah. We're
But
showing
anyway,
how.
yeah, we saw a game at the Sky Dome. She took me to the Canadian National Expo.
Yeah.
That one year, and that was cool getting to see the behind the scenes of it because her boyfriend, fiance now, I think husband, or then again, I've lost touch with so many people, worked at the expo. And so I got all behind the scenes things, and somewhere I came home with a frame, an IMAX film frame,
Oh, cool.
like cut out of the or on the cutting room floor. And so I had a frame, a
Yeah.
70 millimeter frame. Like, this is cool. I can see it in the light.
That's really cool.
um I had some great experiences up there in Toronto, for that summer, and what a cool thing to be able to do.
And what were your parents thinking? You're over there at that age.
They trusted Rick.
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly, in the beginning of my relationship with Rick, he came to the. I want to bring you, like, I remember briefly. I remember the first, some of that first meeting, right? He was on the phone and, hey, I want to bring David some stuff and, gear and some computers and stuff because I think he's doing some cool stuff. He's in developer evangelism, right? I got some stuff. Can I bring it over? And so he came over in his like Geo Prism or something, if I'm remembering correctly. This crappy ass car, but he rolled up and he had a computer and a bunch of software in the back, and he came and met my folks, and they just sort of hit it off with him too. And of course, he's taking care of their kid, helping him grow and learn all this stuff. And we do dinner over at his place, in Issaquah, Washington. We did dinners over there, and so we met. Like I said, I met his daughters and his wife. I was invited to his oldest daughter's first wedding, over there in Toronto at Casa Loma.
Yeah.
Which that was a cool wedding.
That's crazy.
That's a castle on a hill, man. This is cool.
Yeah, there's a crazy story behind Castle. I can't remember it, but the guy like built it for his wife or something like that, or his daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember the
It's a
story.
wild place, and on the back deck, like there's the CN Tower straight ahead, right? You're eye level with the tower.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the only hill in Toronto.
I was
I
trying
remember
to
it being
pull up
pretty
this
flat.
video that Rick sent me, but I'm not sure if I can do it with this to show it to you. I'm trying to figure out if there's a screen share or something here. Share. There we go. Share. Screen. Which screen?
This should be interesting.
I'm not sure if it's going to do it. Okay, we'll do this one. Can you see that?
No, there he goes. That's
Okay.
Rick.
So this is Rick. How do I press play now? Rick, hello, play. What the heck?
Nah.
All
You'll
of a
have
sudden,
to send it to me.
all of a sudden the play button's gone. Sorry, I can
Space
edit.
bar, maybe.
I'm hitting space. Hide.
No, just wants to do the.
I don't know why it's not doing this. What the heck, man? There's the play button.
Oh, but no audio. Shoot. Well, you have to send it to me. That would be fun to see. I haven't seen him in a really long time.
You're not getting any audio at all? No. Okay, whatever. We'll cut this out.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the video. I'll show you the video later. Some other
send
time.
it to me. I'm on WhatsApp too, so you can forward it, straight on over.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, like it was. I mean, to your point of like my folks trusted him to take care of me and make sure I was okay, and I don't, I don't know. It was a once in a lifetime, once in a generational kind of experience and opportunity, and it was, I owe my career to him certainly, because like I might have landed here anyways, right? Like I mean, just the general affinity and learning the stuff, but no way I would have gotten my MCSE had I not had NT4 at home. Right? Had I not had, an array of machines, I had a small little mini server farm in my bedroom growing up, right? Like,
Yeah.
no way I would have had, any of this exposure to the enterprise class stuff, to the, leading edge of this, of all this thing, right? If I was just doing what the school system had, it was passable, it was adequate, and I ran the computer labs and knew how to use, back then, I think you can still find it, RevRDist for Mac, Mac computers, which was their distribution. Here's the image, golden image goes splattered out everywhere. I learned all that stuff in the computer labs and volunteering after school. And, my first job was working for the school district in eighth grade for $4.25 an hour. Like that was my first actual employment was part-time staff at the school district.
So what happened after chapters and stuff like that? So is that when you got that type of jobs, or like early
No,
2000s?
that
What were
was
you doing?
2000. Yeah. So I after I came back from Y2K at chapters, and I was still, still on the payroll, so to speak, and working remotely. Like, how was that? In 2000, I was doing remote work, across the country, across the continent.
Weren't you helping me implement eGain back then as well? Like,
Oh, that's what it was called. Yeah,
eGain?
eGain. That was the support software, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah.
automated
Yep.
email support system. I think
God,
we
I
paid
forgot all
like
about that.
the amount of money we paid for that system to me blows my mind.
It was astronomical, I'm sure.
It was like
I'm sure it was
$3
some-
million or something like that.
Right, in 1999 money, which was like a shit ton of cash, right?
It's ridiculous.
Um,
And now
yeah,
you can
no,
just
after-
vibe code that.
True. For a lot less than $3 million.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So after chapters, and the downfall and the hostile takeover by Indigo and things. I won't walk into an Indigo store. I'm still upset about it.
That was, I think, a setup.
It's something.
Yeah. There's like, I remember Rick like sending her chapter swag, trying to like rub it in. That I swear,
There's something, right?
there's something in there to goad her into buying it. I swear. It was all like corporate strategy, something beyond my pay grade.
Espionage, something. No. So I had a contract gig at Microsoft, like I said, in the Windows Me team for a hot minute and a half. I had a couple of other odd jobs after that. I worked for a friend's dad for a bunch of years, and then I sort of got my call up at Microsoft.
How did that happen? They just like emailed you one day, or because
No,
you were
it
obviously
was-
on their radar.
It was no. I applied for many years and
Really?
got absolutely nothing. No. I mean, I applied to Exchange server roles, config manager roles, PM, software test. I applied to all sorts of roles. Technologist, whatever the hell that means. I
That
applied to
surprises
so many
me,
different
since like
roles.
Bill Gates would even have known your name. Like,
I who knows? But no, for a long time I couldn't get through recruiting.
Strange.
One of the last projects I did at one gig, we had brought in Microsoft Consulting Services, and I had hit it off with the consultant, and we became fast friends. And I think he gave my resume. At that time, I was looking for a way out of the organization I was working at.
didn't you
And so
use
I
your
was like-
contact with Rick or anything? Like,
Rick was long gone by then.
okay.
This is all post chapters.
That's
Right.
true. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
it
might
was
have been doing the
all-
VC stuff at that time.
Yeah, he was all in VC land, and I mean, couldn't really do much for me still sitting in Seattle. But
Okay.
so no, I think the consultant I became friends with, I think, gave my resume to a hiring manager, and also in consulting, and then that's when like the thing happened fast. It was yeah, sure, apply. Hey, I got your name. Recruiting called, and hey, can we do a phone screen? Cool. Hey, can we? So I had two phone screens. It was a soft skills screen. How am I a person in a consulting kind of org.
See, like, this scares the crap out of somebody who's trying to make it in this world and trying to apply to places. Like, if someone like
It's
you
impossible now.
had trouble
It's
getting into a
impossible
place,
now.
like,
No, I know. Speaking of AI for evil, I don't know how it happens these days. I don't know how you get through the AI screening.
the
I mean,
ATS or
now-
whatever it's called.
whatever they call it
Yeah.
now. It's weird, right? In that, like, I've even taken some friends' resumes and been like, here's the job post, right? Copilot AI. Here's the
Yeah.
job post. Here's the resume. Write it to match that so it passes through an AI screener,
Yeah.
right?
You've got AI
And
resumes being searched by AI
it,
recruiters.
yeah, it's like a circle jerk, right?
Yeah.
It's this stupid, like it gets
But
like a
then these
divide
people
by
get
zero
mad at you. They're
problem.
like, you used AI to write your resume, so we don't want to talk to you. But you used AI to write the job post.
And to screen me out. Like I
Yeah.
had to use it to get through to talk to you in the first place.
It's
It's a
weird.
weird world, and I know it's like, well, because that way we can just use the thing to screen the stuff. But like, but there's so many people out there, and I see this even in my own journey at Microsoft. There's so many people like, you might find some hidden trait, some hidden soft skill, non on the resume thing when you're talking to somebody that is like, holy shit, we can teach them the stupid tech. Like, this is the right fit for the team, the org. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can teach or that you can assimilate into that isn't a core tech skill, isn't a bullet item, right? You're not gonna put on a resume. In fact, you'd be silly to put on a resume like loves to joke around with the rest of the team, good rapport, good camaraderie. We go to the local Mexican joint on Thursdays because that's how we bond. You'd be stupid to put that on a resume, right? But you get someone who like, would be an obvious, culture fit, an obvious morale fit, an obvious like, dude, this guy's got some like, the guy or gal, right? This person's got they've got a quality, the X factor, right?
Right.
You can't AI that out. You can't AI that in.
And as
How
long as
would
they're
you write that
teachable,
down? Right? Right. And and similarly, because my wife just ran into this at her job, you hire someone based on a resume that ends up becoming incredibly toxic,
yeah.
right? Who ends up being super negative, dragging everything down, always finding something to bitch about, always finding just brings down the
Yeah.
whole thing. Like you can't screen for that in a resume.
Yeah.
You can't screen for that. And obviously they couldn't screen for it in the interview because they got through and then like morale of the team went into the shit. And
Yeah.
then thankfully that individual has left the organization and all of a sudden, whoop, everything's back and the team's operating again and like the manager my wife relayed to me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, the manager, my boss was like, it was that bad? Yeah, it was worse, right?"
Wow.
That's where like removing. It sort of gets back to some of the other AI conversations, removing the humanity of it all. Like that's tough, right? Particularly in like recruiting,
Yeah.
right? Gets to a certain spot. It took me 8 years to from high school to when I landed at Microsoft. And I was really clear. Like I didn't go to college. I do not have a college degree. I have taken zero college classes for zero college hours, right? Um, I made sure I was crystal clear on this. She's like, yeah, I don't care. That's fine. You know what you're doing, right? Um, it's just one of those things of it took a long time to finally get into Microsoft. And again, I think it was my buddy gave my resume to my then hiring manager, and it went fast after that. Like I said, I had two phone screens. I got invited down to finals day, which that was a fun trip in Irvine, California, is where they were doing the finals day. All the final interviews for people. Flew home on a Thursday. On a Friday, had the offer letter. Like it went very fast.
That's crazy. So it
Um,
really is like, if I think back on all the jobs I had, it's all because I knew people there. So,
mhm.
I mean, it's not, I maybe the definition of nepotism is family, but nepotism to me is also friend networks. I think it's
Yeah,
really
networking. Yeah,
I think it's even more important these days it's who you know. It's also
yeah.
what you know, but it's really much like how do you do that today? I mean, you're not looking, but like, are you hiring people as well? Like, are you conducting these interviews? How do kids these days get attention? How do they get into these networks?
Man. Um, no, I'm not in a hiring position. I'm not a hiring manager, which is probably better for everybody.
Do you do any of the interviews at all? Like, do you meet people?
I've done interviews. Yeah, I've done some interviews. How they get to me, I don't know. Right? That's like, but before their resume lands on my desk, they've gone through some other gauntlet. right? They've had to go through some other obstacle course and go through a couple of survivor challenges and something else and win the immunity necklace, and then they finally land at our doorstep.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's got to be, Survivor 50 hashtag Survivor. Right. Like that's the kind of thing where it's the TV's over there, which I'm pointing to. You can't actually see it, but that's why I keep the TV's over there. It's I don't know what the process is, and I mean, when I've seen people, and like I've sent my wife's resume to Micro, like this is a role that she could knock out of the park, but you got to get through the AI nonsense first, and she doesn't have the technical skills, but she could learn that so easily, right? There's a lot of things you can easily teach. I don't know how they get through it, but I've done interviews, and I've done the tech calls and hiring devs and things like that. And it's a lot of, do they have the relevant experience for what we're looking for? A
It's
lot of
weird to
what I
me. The
look
whole
for is,
process is like, if you're really good at a certain job that is not related to resume building, how do you get that job? Because if you're an amazing resume builder, then you're probably getting a job in HR.
right, yeah,
Right?
fair
Like,
enough, right?
so how do these people who aren't very good at getting resumes but really would be amazing at the job get in? It's
Yeah. I don't know.
mind-boggling.
I mean, I think it is truly like like you said, it's a networking thing. It's a, do you know the right person? Can you get somebody to slip your resume to the hiring manager who can take a look at it and be like, yeah, make sure this person gets in, right? Because I think as the hiring manager, and again, I've never been a hiring manager for an FTE position, um, but I think they can tell recruiting, go get this one too. Like,
I'm
go
also
put this in the
concerned
stack.
for those people as well, the hiring managers as well. Their jobs seem to be at risk.
I, I honestly think that my organization tried to make me a people manager a little while ago, and a couple of reorgs ago, and for fine reasons it didn't work out. Totally fine. That's great. In fact, I think I'm happier in that the team I'd be running are my peers,
Yeah.
and we all get along great, right?
Yeah.
And that dynamic would change, right? I'd still be fun Zazzo, but it's different if I'm your boss,
Yeah.
like that dynamic would change. So I'm happy that didn't work, but honestly, when I think about it, like hiring scares the hell out of me. Like being the one to make that final decision, and that's just simply because I feel like it's high stakes. What if you choose the wrong one? What if you hire the toxic individual? What if? What if? What if? How do you weed out and find the best candidate for the role?
And most
And
people don't realize how expensive that is to hire the
it's
wrong person.
expensive. Absolutely. Well, it can cost you in so many different ways. I mean,
Yeah.
never mind the hard dollar cost of onboarding, benefits, pay, salary bonus,
Training.
signing bonus, training. Like there's actual hard costs to that. But then you get into just the soft cost, right? Bad fit on the team, right? That can bring down morale, bring down productivity, bring down right. And my team's had their fair share of like dead weight,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, they're dead weight, they're not doing anything. It's easy to kind of compartmentalize them over here to the corner, but also like, wow, they're not doing anything. What are they doing? They've had months to do the small thing and they haven't done it. Like then you just start bitching about it and it becomes water cooler fodder and not the good kind. And
Then you go on their
again,
Instagram or TikTok and you see them posting, "This is what I do at Microsoft all day. I go get myself a chai latte.
yeah,
Then
no,
I
you
go
sure
get,
don't,
then
Send.
I get a massage."
Must be nice to not do any work and get paid for it. Yeah, I mean, like, for me, it's been, yeah, that would be the one thing. I mean, I don't want to write performance reviews, and, I think hiring and firing, I think would be the biggest growth opportunities for growth. How about that?
Yeah.
That I would have, and I've said yes to candidates in the past that we hired one that didn't do anything. I'm like, well, that sucks because now I feel like that reflects on me. I've said no to to candidates that I'm sure we dodged bullets.
Yeah.
But I've also been able to say yes to some candidates that we've had, and we've got one dev manager that has been a rock star, and so they're out there. How he got through the gauntlet of hiring. Now this was right before the recruiting put everything through AI. so overtly, and so that's probably how he got in.
What's
Um,
what's one project that you can talk about that you've been really proud of in your past that like I'm sure you've been part of some product launches at Microsoft or maybe some other jobs as well. What do you think was the most
um,
exciting?
I mean, less product launches. I mean, now that we're a software and services company, right? So, when I was in consulting services, there were some pretty big wins, pretty big project wins, large enterprise, large enterprise customer. We did their, I mentioned, I sort of alluded to before, right? We did their worldwide upgrade from Exchange 2003 to Exchange 2007, 2007 to 2010. The 2003 to 2007 was a huge effort in that, we went from 30 megabyte mailboxes for staff to 1 gigabyte mailboxes. And like that seems cute now when we talk about like, 100 gigabyte mailboxes. But, from 30 megs, that's like 7 emails these days, right? Particularly when you talk about, rich text and HTML mail, like that was a massive productivity overhaul for the company. Because, you can talk to people past and present that live, that were employed by the company at those days. And like, oh yeah, oh my God, I always got nagged about having to clean up my mailbox, right? 30 megs is nothing, even back in 2003, 2007. Um, so that was a pretty big win. And then certainly building to 2010, I get that this is, 26 years ago, 16 years ago. Um, Being in the consulting services and driving that level of impact, and then doing the same upgrade from 2007 to 2010, still keeping the same mailbox, but enabling unified communications, enabling voice, enabling soft phones with, then called Microsoft Link, now called Skype for Business, now Teams. Um, those were pretty big wins. When I think about what we've done in the product group work that I've done, um, I left consulting services and went into the Exchange Server product group, and was largely in charge of, for a lot of the time there, in charge of customer onboarding into then called Exchange Online Dedicated, or Office 365 Dedicated, which is, for those large strategic enterprise customers, here's a version we don't offer it anymore because other things, but here's Office 365 on dedicated hardware, right? Before we were really comfortable with multi-tenancy, before we were really comfortable with the logical isolation that we had in the stack all up.
Is that hardware that
Um,
lives in their domain or yours?
Nope, that's in our data centers. So
Okay.
that was in our data centers, but it was dedicated racks. We would have, 4, 8, 12, 16 racks of Exchange servers across multiple data centers for, redundancy and geo availability. And brought in, millions of mailboxes and
So
helped
that's
shepherd those onto the
essentially
service.
dedicated cloud services.
Dedicated clouds. Yep. Yep. But yeah, no, I oversaw the migration of millions of mailboxes into the service and onboarding all of those customers, and strategic customers, financial, oil, gas, accounting, big ass retail, and even to some degree some um, federal civilian, state and local customers as well. Yeah, being able to bring all of them in, into the service, it was some pretty cool strategic things. And then seeing how, and we'd have customers come talk to us, and we do these customer advisory boards, and building good rapport with customers, and seeing how post migration they were able to unlock, more, info worker capabilities and things like that. That's cool stuff to see.
And what's exciting you now about technology today? Like I'm sure you
Not a,
have stuff
not a lot.
you can't talk about that you're working on. I don't want to ask you what you're working on now because that's
No, for
obviously,
sure, right.
but
And there's, yeah, and the stuff that I work on right now is what we would call highly confidential.
of course.
So no, I can't talk about that. But it's a lot of the same thing, right? It's a lot of my work is now internally focused, so less with customers, though I still work with customers. But a lot of my work is focused on empowering our own engineering teams to do their best work. And that's nice to see. It's always good to have the customer view. And I look at our internal engineering system, our engineering teams across all the product groups, across all the organizations, as our customers, right? And so, there's some rah talk, one Microsoft, customer focused, customer obsessed, whatever buzzword bingo, right? Um, but looking at again, the teams that I work with that I support internally at Microsoft, they're my customers, right?
Do you feel
They
that?
could choose to hire somebody else, right? And they
Right.
could dump my team and my organization, my team's work. They don't like us, they can dump us. And so
Do you
a
feel that
lot of the work that
Microsoft
I
is more focused on enterprise stuff, or do you think they're still focused on consumer products? Like, I'm sure they're coming.
we've never been focused on consumer.
Well, I mean, with operating systems, things like that, right? Like we have,
Never
and
been
of
focused
course,
on consumer.
Copilot, things like that. To me, I would
I
consider that consumer focus.
Yeah, I don't think
Like,
we've ever been focused on consumer. I think it's an area that I think it's an area that Microsoft has missed. I'll stand on a soapbox for a minute here. I think I think Microsoft's done a lot of work with the enterprise. Obviously, we've always been enterprise and business focused, and that's where we've printed all the money and all the things. I think we've had some misadventures into consumer land, and
Zoom.
uh, I love my Zune. Thank you very much. I still own a few of them. They're in storage somewhere. It was a better player than the iPod. But actually, I mean, but that's a really good point, right? Is we had the best enterprise smartphone out there, bar none, for a
Yeah.
long time. Windows Phone, Windows Mobile was the best enterprise focused thing. But that was the problem. It was the phone that was enterprise focused, right? It was trying to, how do we take the Windows paradigm and shove it into a mobile device and make it work? I'm like, I had all flavors of the Windows smartphone. I had the original Motorola MPX 200. Buzz, there you go for those arcane folks. The original flip phone, right? The smartphone that was a flip phone
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
the MPX 200. I had the Palm Pilot Trio. I had all the flavors of these things, right? The Philips Nino and the Philips Velo, right? Windows CE. And it was again trying to wedge the Windows thing into a mobile device. And all of that being said, so we had the best enterprise focused smartphone ever, but that's not consumer focused, right? Apple came and ate all of our lunches, BlackBerry, Microsoft, everybody, when they came out with this thing. This is an iPhone. And, and like, here's a phone that's like fun to work with. They were entirely consumer focused.
Yeah.
They were targeting the person, the human behind the device, and not the IT shop behind the device. And my belief is where we started to lose the plot on the whole thing was we had Apple made a device. The iPhone 1 sucked, right? Didn't do any of the enterprise controls, lied to Exchange Server about encrypting the device. iOS 3 lied through its tooth. Yeah, it's encrypted, of course. I encrypted it all. But here was a device that all of a sudden, like, well, this is fun to use. I got these apps thing even before the App Store showed up, right? Here's this super fun thing that I get to play with. And then you ended up having C levels be like, hey, IT guy, make this thing work. Well, we don't support that. Don't care. Make this thing work. I want to use this one. I don't want to use your stupid thing that is a brick. Make this sexy thing work. And I think the table started turning, right? Was leadership at Microsoft was more focused on enterprise and selling enterprise solutions, and you needed security for the enterprise, and you needed mobile app and phone and things for the enterprise, but we didn't do it in a way that was focused on the human, right? We didn't do it in a way that was focused on the person, and I think that's where we lost the plot. And then all of a sudden we went, oh shit, we need to go do that, and then we were too late, right? And by then, I mean, Windows Phone, one of the better OSs that's ever been out there. I still wish, man, the smartest thing. Did you ever use a Windows Phone?
No.
Okay. The Outlook tile had a number on it, and like if I look at my iPhone now, okay, 756 is the little bubble on top of Outlook here. The number's way worse than that, but 756. That's not a number that's useful to me.
No.
Like, I don't care that I've got, like, 756 doesn't mean shit to me,
Yeah.
right? What Windows Mobile did was the unseen, not unread, but unseen. Since the last time I opened Outlook, here's what's come in. That's way more actionable, way more useful to me as an indicator than the number of unread messages. unless maybe I've gotten some metaphysics messages since we started this call.
No, I completely agree. That's a really good point.
Unseen is way more useful as a
Yeah.
number. And the way that, I mean, widely derided, widely trashed the Metro interface of all the squares. Say what you will. Yeah, that was, we did too much too fast on that.
I actually
Windows 8
I
was a
like the look of that.
disaster.
I think the
But
design was good.
the design was good. We just didn't execute it correctly. And again, I mean, Windows 8 was an abomination. Windows Vista was something special too. Um, I think when you look at that sort of thing, that's where everyone else is eating our lunch in that case by looking at the human and not looking too much, only solely focus on the enterprise. I get it. We make all our money from the enterprise. That's where we made all our money. But like, the pervasiveness of Gmail and Google's made great strides in here's some stuff that's for free for people to use.
But in the
Right?
enterprise space, how much, as you put it, is Linux eating your lunch?
Not much. I mean, I guess I don't know, right? We've adopted so much more, in the post-Ballmer years of being ecosystem agnostic. We run Linux in the Azure data centers,
Okay.
right? Like you can run your Linux applications on Linux in Azure, right? The company has pivoted so far away from being Windows only. It happened too late, I think.
I figured that would
Um,
have been a bad word.
I'm a Microsoft employee that has iPhones. I've had iPhones. I'm using AirPods. You can hear. I've got the Apple Watch. This machine right here is a MacBook.
Yeah.
Um, there was a long time where that was a bad word. I mean, early in my career, in the early bomb, in the middle of the bomber years, this was a firing offense, right? Like that, that could get you absolutely trashed. And particularly in a field role, right, where I'm customer facing, you better damn sure be well, I'm using a Windows phone, right?
Yeah.
Um, we want to use the things, and that's a lot of that. A lot of that culture is gone, and because not all the best products are made at Microsoft, which is it's an important realization to make that we make some good product, we do some good stuff. Some people do some things better, right? And again, I think we Microsoft have been more focused on the enterprise for ever, right? All the big money deals were enterprise. Back office made all of our money. Windows NT made all of our money. Office made all of our money, and we did all that in enterprise, right? We didn't do that in the consumer space. And we're catching up slowly, and Copilot's sort of there, though I think Copilot needs to hurry it up and get a little bit better. Um, Bing. I use Bing. I'm fine with Bing. I get mocked all the time for using Bing. Like I get ridiculed all the time because I use Bing. It works for me. I don't care. Um, but again, I mentioned Google and Google Docs and Google Sheets, and everyone I know in my age uses Google things. And it's because that was there before we were, right? Google beat us to the punch. And here's a 10 gig mailbox for free. And here's, web docs for free. And you don't have to pay for Office, and you don't have to pay a bunch of money. It's because you're the product, by the way. But
Right.
that's it,
Data collection.
Um, I trust Google much less than I trust anyone else. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I use
because
LibreOffice myself, but
Yeah, right. And that's fine too, right? Like that again, that's the thing is like consumer operates a very different way. Humans operate a different way, and we get why we need to run with certain security thing and security's gotten a lot more transparent, a lot better. That's more human friendly than it was
I think
uh,
people are
you know,
more aware of it too now. I think they understand that they're being tracked and everything they're doing. Maybe some people don't.
yeah.
Like when I talk
Yeah.
to people online, some of the people I talk to, they still have the illusion that there's a secured. I'm like, there's no such thing as security. I mean, there's secure practices are better than relying on actual encryption and things like that because you can always
Well,
get by it, right?
that's true. I've got kids coming in a minute, so this
Sure.
might be a little interesting here. I think it's the castle isn't the thing anymore, right? And like I mean, when you and I were coming up at chapters and at other places, like if you were outside the castle walls, you were outside. If you were inside the castle walls, you were inside, and that just doesn't work anymore, right? There's too many, the firewall being the the only line again, the big castle wall with the big moat on it. I'm gonna call. it's fallacy now, right? Like, there's too many ways to get inside and to Swiss cheese the thing. There's too, it's you can't extend the firewall out to everywhere, and that we've seen over and over with different breaches that that's a misnomer, right? Obviously, people can break inside. It takes one email to somebody says click on the dancing pig, and they click on the dancing pig, and now we're inside,
Yeah.
right? Like um, so yeah, I think people understand that more. People understand more, cybersecurity, cyber attacks, less about the actual security bits, but they understand that nothing is sacred anymore.
I
Um,
think they're also starting to learn more about the fact that, like you say, they are the product, and I'm not sure people really care.
I don't know that people fully get that though. I mean, like it's a free thing, so it's free to sign up, and I free, and we all read the terms and conditions. Next, 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 next,
Yeah.
next, next, right? Like none of us are going through the privacy policies. None of us are looking at any of this stuff. Yeah, the 14-year-old saying like, I don't read this shit. I hit next. Um,
Exactly.
that's where I don't know that people necessarily. I think people feel it, right? And like we see it all the time of like, oh yeah, I was talking with my friend about needing to buy some disinfectant spray, and then all of a sudden I saw an ad on Lysol. My phone must be listening to me. No, your phone actually isn't. But we just know a lot more about things, right? I was telling a friend of mine the other day, Target kind of got outed, right? Target stores got outed. This is a long time ago, but they got outed a while ago. Like, Target got outed a long time ago with their massive data collection stuff. And that's where, all your phones ping, right, looking for Wi-Fi, right? Well, your access points can listen to the pings and track it, right, your phone's identifier. And what they were doing was watching as these phones would walk around the store and go into kids stuff and go look at vitamins and go look at toilet paper and go look at Lysol spray. This is not, sponsored by Lysol. Look at TVs and Nintendo, whatever, right? And then you'd come to the, you walk up to the check stand, right? To the checkout counter. And then they could go, well, all right, we approximate that you're in checkout line number 6. Well, at that time, this transaction with your Target Red card went through at check stand 6. So that we can make that correlation. And you use this payment card. Okay, cool. So now we start building this graph of what this model looks like. And then you come back again and we saw that same phone. Oh, okay. And we saw that same card number. Okay. And then you went online and bought something. Okay. Well, now we can tie that with the payment instrument. Now we're building this profile out just by walking around the store with your phone in your pocket, not connected to the Wi-Fi,
And it
right? Because
knows
now we
your
can
patterns better than you do.
and knows your patterns better than you do. And I remember hearing a story a long time ago where, some targeted ads got sent out to like a teenager, or something to the house, a teenager. And it was like, yo, folic acid, and here's a bunch of prenatal vitamins and stuff like that. And you deal on this. And I remember the parents, being up and outraged of like, how the hell would you send this to my daughter? Well, because she was pregnant and she hadn't told anyone yet. And yeah, Target knew them better than they knew themselves. Like it's interesting stuff, right? So the idea that I think people see it. I think people feel it. I don't know how to say it. They think they feel it, but I don't know that they know necessarily that like they are the product, right? That like Gmail reads your mail and looks for keywords and then gives you ads based on what your email is. And it's like, ads are everywhere. They're pervasive. They always have. You've had commerce and art and you've had to raise money for things. It's just how the world works, which is dumb, but different thing.
Facebook is one of
But
the worst. Man, they just
oh, yes,
it's just
I still check it, but I hate it
yeah.
so much. Um, there's me making a choice of not bailing out of it, right? Um, uh, but I don't know that anyone fully understands to the extent of it, right? And that's the thing is like, yeah, you get ads all the time, but like, yeah, that's because they're reading your mail.
Yeah.
That's because they're looking, no human is reading your mail. That's not a thing, but the algorithm is,
They're definitely
right?
watching your scroll patterns. You stopped an extra 2.5 seconds on this image.
Yep. That becomes a trigger. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And that's a very real Facebook thing, right?
Yeah.
Is you lingered. Well, whatever that was caught your attention. So we're going to show you more of that,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. If you're just doom scrolling and you hover like, and then no, that was enough. That was enough to be like, stop scrolling, next scrolling, right? It's creepy.
So what do you think about that lawsuit where the woman was suing the social media channels for her mental distress?
Is that the one in New Mexico that just went through the landmark case in New Mexico?
I think so.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
against
where it
Meta.
was.
I don't know anything about it. It's real. It's very real. I mean, Meta's been under fire for Instagram, not taking care of teenagers, right? Like that's been widely known as we don't let we don't let any of the kids have social media for that reason. Like
Yeah.
as adults, as 40 something year old, we don't do a good job of it, and we're fully formed brains, right? Like, let alone those, you don't have a fully formed brain until you're 25, isn't that the thing, right? You don't, your prefrontal cortex doesn't exist yet. So it's like, you know, how is a kid supposed to manage the barrage of input,
Yeah.
right? Like that's, we got to do better. And we got to hold companies accountable for this stuff,
See,
be better and not just profit margin.
I'm so conflicted because I have 13 and 15-year-old girls, and they do, obviously they have access to YouTube and Insta and all this stuff. No, I don't let them have their own accounts, but still they're
Right.
sitting there and they're surfing shorts, and I'm trying to get them off of it. And then I'm like, well, am I putting them at a disadvantage too? Because this is the technology. This is the way the world's turning. Am I going to just make them Luddites and put them at a disadvantage? Or am I going to allow them to navigate this and be able to develop with this technology at the same time? I don't know what the balance
Yeah,
is.
I don't know what the balance is either. I mean, we've got a fairly rigid, fairly rigid. I mean, except for school stuff, we've got a fairly rigid like no YouTube policy, and that's just because we know that the algorithm can take you into places, right? And
Yeah.
and we recognize that YouTube is not well moderated,
Yeah.
and I don't envy the challenge, right? I'm not saying that I can make a better mousetrap, right? But it needs more resources thrown at it to avoid predatory things, inappropriate content, the whole smash. So we don't do it. We know YouTube here, unless it's through the school computer, and then they got their own filters, and we're hovering, right? We know what's going on. I know everything that happens on the internet here because I'm me and I work in tech, and so I can go dig through and see what's going on too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
don't know
I,
if the
I
balance
even
is,
actually showed
you know,
them that I go through their history, and that way they're
yeah,
aware as well. I'm like, look, I can see everything you're doing online. I've got it all
right.
tracked here. And you're on Google's family link, which I don't know if that's good or not either, but that's tracking
Every
too. But
something. I mean, it's such a different, being a parent in this space. This is some of the strife that my mother and I have. Because when I was growing up, my brother's 11 years older than I am, so she had basically two only kids, right? And we didn't do sports every single day and all sorts of stuff, right? And, with all the three kids doing sports everywhere, it's a very different space and fully connected and with devices and with.
yeah.
It's such a different plane of existence than we had before, right? And you and I coming up was way different. Like I had a cell phone when I was up there in Toronto in 1999 that cost $160 a month, and I had so many minutes I could use and no internet, and texting was barely a thing, right?
Yeah.
Like
We had
this.
Snake.
We had Snake, yeah. My Nokia 6160, I had Snake to play,
Yeah.
right? I loved that game. Um, such a different world now where everything's available all the time, and that's not necessarily a good thing,
Yeah.
right? And how do you teach your kids to be okay with things and be creative and have attention spans longer than this lifespan of a goldfish right? Like
But to
it's
my point again, I'm just not sure
it's
if limiting that is putting them at a technological disadvantage. Like if you were not
totally get
allowed
it.
to have, put together these 386s or whatever you were putting together back then,
Yeah, yeah,
would you be
right,
behind? Like, I
totally
don't know.
right.
And obviously it wasn't as dangerous because it wasn't online and you probably weren't working on the internet all the time. And maybe you were.
Well, didn't it didn't well, I had a lot. I mean, yeah, we had AOL dial up and that sort of thing, but I mean, yes, but also the world wasn't as connected. So even the internet back in 1996 is way different than it is now,
Yeah.
right? And it was still a dial-up pseudo transactional thing. You log on to CompuServe or Earthlink or AOL or whatever. You log on to your internet thing, but there's only a handful of things you could get to. There wasn't everything, and
Yeah.
you didn't have hubs of content, and you didn't have, you know, ready access to whatever your heart could possibly desire, or
Yeah.
your teenage hormones could possibly desire.
Right.
Like, we didn't have that, right? If we wanted to go look at naughty stuff, we had to go sneak a playbook out of, a Playboy out of somewhere,
Go
right?
for a hike in the forest and find one.
Or guy, right, yeah, or you turn on to, Cinemax, the
Yeah.
scrubby thing. You're like, I think I see something,
Yeah, exactly.
like, yeah, you
I
didn't.
swear that was a boob. No, no, that was a bald head.
Right? Like that's what we had. It wasn't like typing into the. I don't know if the 14-year-olds listening, but you could just type into the Google search for boobs, and
Yeah.
then like
Yeah.
that wasn't a thing. And so it is. It's a very different battlefield, minefield, whatever, as a parent these days,
Yeah.
of just how do you juggle online safety with, yeah, like you're saying, still empowering and letting them learn how to adapt and cope with all these things. And yeah, I don't know what the right balance is,
I don't know either.
like, and then how do you tier it so that, the older kids get the access, but then the younger ones still sheltered, but then like that seems unbalanced, but also super appropriate. Like
And then there's
it's
an era of this is unfair, and you trust
right.
them more than me, and it's not you that I'm
It has nothing to
mistrusting.
do with that.
It's the
I
people
don't
out
trust
there.
the world
Yeah, I don't
out
trust the
there.
world. They don't get that, and I keep trying to tell them that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, it's very difficult. I'm like, it's not you that don't trust. It's
Right.
the people who can turn on your camera at any second, who have access to all of your data, and can
Mhm.
just like turn on your mic, and even if your phone's
I
off, they
mean,
can still do this stuff.
there's lots of things. Yeah. Well, and yeah, again, clicking on the dancing pig, you click on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
You install something you shouldn't have installed. You don't know that you installed something you didn't need. Like
Yep.
we know of a lot of these things because we grew up before this stuff was possible. We knew what the boundary was. We knew what was good. I mean, AI is a thing. You can go sign up for a bunch of AI services and not have any idea that we've done what you've done.
What was that
And
crazy
then,
virus that we had at Love something back then?
oh
And
yeah, the I love you virus. Oh
yeah,
yeah,
Love You
that
virus.
had
That was it.
chapters back then.
Yeah.
God, that was a
I remember
pain in
Rick
the hell.
yelling at everybody, "Do not have auto
Oh,
read."
oh man, I remember that. I remember that was a 2-3 day shutdown. Oh, I remember that.
We were trying to clean it up
That
because people
was,
were automatically opening attachments or something in their emails.
and whoop, and then it keeps going and it keeps going. And nope, I remember having to do a lot of search and destroy on that one.
Yeah, it's like days of
That
battling.
was, and that was before, I mean, again, that's Exchange 5.5, right? That was before we had, even rules to say don't let mail out that has this, like that was, yeah, that took a long time to clean up. That was 2-3 days. And you mentioned our friend eGain, right? That all ran off the corporate mail thing. So then we couldn't get, customer support stuff working. We couldn't get our own internal. Yeah, no, that was a disaster for a couple of days. That was all hands on deck. Sev A out to Microsoft to, help us clean this thing up. I'm sure they were slammed,
Yeah.
product support was buried at it too.
I remember when I would build computers like in the early 2000s, I would have to make sure that everything was offline when I built them. And then I would have to go and download all the updates first,
Yep.
then install all the updates, make sure they're all okay before I ever plugged it in the internet, or else instantly everything would be corrupt.
Oh yeah, you're talking like the Windows XP pre-SP2 days, Code Red, NIMDA. Yeah. Oh
Man.
yeah. No, like yeah, you couldn't if your machine was internet connected without any firewall.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to totally air gap it before you could plug it in. Otherwise, it was owned in seconds.
And then there was
I think
one
that's still
point.
true.
Well, there was one point where I was always installing like Norton or McAfee or something like that. But then there
Yep,
was one point where I noticed that actually Defender was better.
it is better. Yeah,
And I
it was
just all of
better.
a sudden I just stopped installing other antiviruses. I'm like,
Mhm.
Windows Defender to me is just actually better.
It's actually good. Yeah, I mean, it's. I won't
Do
say
you
it's like
run
one of the
other
surprising
antivirus as well, or
things.
do you just use Defender?
Missions Defender.
Yeah.
Yep. It's quietly become like one of the best in class,
I don't even
layers,
know
and
I don't even know when that was, but I remember all of a sudden I was just like, wait a minute.
it just snuck up on you,
Yeah,
didn't
I
it?
was just like, this is
Yeah.
working fine. Like,
No, and I mean, because I've got a my own personal tenant is a Office 365 Microsoft tenant, that sort of thing. I run Defender at home. right on my Mac runs Defender.
I didn't
Tied
know
up
you
to
could do
my
that.
my self thing. Yeah, we do. Defender for Mac. It's for enterprises, and it's like again, my personal email is my own personal, is my own business tenant. Um, but yeah, it's quietly become one of the best things out there, and everything else is meh. I mean, I would argue today that Norton and McAfee are more malware than they are anything else these days,
Yeah.
or bloatware.
Bloatware, I would
Uh,
say for sure. Yeah.
Super bloatware.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would uninstall all that nonsense straight away. But yeah, no, I mean, and a part of it's user education. Like, I mean, part of it also we know not to click on the dancing pig,
Yeah.
right? And so we got to do more education on that. We could have always done better. I think IT by and large has done a crappy job of blaming the victims, blaming our users. I think IT shops have gotten better at that. If not, they need to. Um, I rail against some parts of my team. I won't name them. That sometimes ship customer hostility as a feature, and I think that's a bad thing. I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to be hostile to your customers because they can choose someone else.
Yeah.
And even though we're an internal organization at Microsoft, like they could still fire us. They could still hire someone else to do this work.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
I always assume the problem's going to exist between the keyboard and chair, as they say. So you always have to
yeah.
try to build for that. You always have to try
I
to
mean, we
like,
always deal with knuckleheads,
yeah,
right? We deal with ignorant users. We deal with. I mean, I lose my patience just like anybody else. Don't ask the kids. Like, we all deal with idiot people, but you gotta try to be okay with them. You get one that you're gonna lose it on, and it's fine. This guy's an idiot and doesn't read anything. Okay, fine. But IT shops by and large treat. I think they treat the end users as idiots, and I think people are better than that. I like to think people are better than that, and maybe I'm being an idiot.
well, I would put the
Um,
onus on the designer because if it's not intuitive and
mhm.
a standard user who the intended user is supposed to be can't operate your system properly without getting into the bad parts or not being able to figure out what's going on, then I think that's
Yeah,
onus is on the UX UI or the developer or if it's
I think
not
all the
working the way it is.
above.
So
I mean, I constantly get frustrated with. I've always been frustrated with Microsoft error codes, right? A hexadecimal code, 0x80080005. That's access denied. I know that. Nobody else knows that.
I don't
Don't
know.
tell me to ask my system administrator. I'm the system administrator. Like, tell me what actually is wrong
Yeah.
here. And there's a vendor I'm working with right now on some products, then their error handling sucks. And like, I'm the guy who needs to know what the hell the problem is. Yeah, we can always do better. You're right. It was UX UI. It is intent. It's usability studies. Microsoft has done a lot of this, and I don't know if they still do, but they used to invite people out to campus, and you could go sit there, and you'd sit in a room with a one-way mirror and a camera, and go do this thing and talk out loud about what you're doing. And then behind the glass, you've got UX guys, UI guys learning what the human, oh, well, I look at this. I think this means I'm going to do this. Like I'm using this, Riverside platform. I think this is the mic button. I'm going to click on that to mute my mic. Like that's, that kind of usability. Watch humans use the mousetrap, right? Watch us go through through the maze. It just makes it better, right? If you get a lab coat or a propeller hat working on building something and they build it for themselves, it's going to be usable by a lab coat or propeller hat. It's not going to be used
But even
by,
like I will build
you know,
something and I'll have an app and I'm using it for a while and I'll come back to it 6 months later and I sometimes be like, oh wait, how do I do that? And
yeah,
it's interesting that even like, and I'm a UX UI guy, so it's interesting
right,
that things that I think are intuitive while I'm building it are not so intuitive when you come back and actually try to
right.
use it again. So
Take a step back and revisit it and see how it looks and yeah, find out that that didn't make any sense. What was I doing then? What was
yeah,
I thinking when I built that switch?
that's why I find things that if you make it simple, like try to get it like dirt simple to
Mhm.
do these things, it's a lot better than trying to add any type of complexity.
It's funny, thinking about when you say that, I'm thinking about the AI conversation about, building the chores wizard thing, right? And it's like I've had to go back a bunch of times. Like, this is too many clicks.
Yeah,
This takes too long to get to the thing, right? Get me to the cheese, right?
yeah,
Build a better mousetrap, right? I want to get to the cheese. Stop moving my cheese around. Where's the click? How do I get to the thing? Um, because it will try to go like, well, here's the thing, and then here's like a details view, and then you gotta click on the edit view, and then you gotta click on the save, and you go back to the detail. Like, make the details view editable. It's
Yeah.
one less page I gotta manage, one less thing I gotta go do. Just let me edit the thing and get out. Like, I want to get in thing and then get out. I don't want to admire the details page. It looks so pretty. It's so nice. There's all my content.
But it
I
even
would
comes down
change
to
that to a
like,
1 to 2.
even with the prompting itself, I see a lot of people, they're like saying, well, I've got the secret prompt for you. You say that you are the role of this person and you do that. And I'm like, you've got like a freaking 40
yes.
paragraph prompt. And I'm like,
Yes.
just build it. I talk to it now. Like I have, Windows H, and then I just talk, and I'm talking to it like it's human, because in my mind, these are trained on natural language. So if you
Right.
use language that's not natural, like you wouldn't talk to somebody, hey, Zazzo, you are a product engineer, and I'm going to tell you who you are and what you do first before
Right.
I don't talk to you like that. I talk to you as an open communication, and that's what it's been
Yep.
trained on, our natural talk. So I figure the more naturally you talk to it, the better it operates and understands. And I come
There's
up
a
with
little bit
these
of both.
simple, like 2 sentence prompts, and it just let it do its thing, and it's way better.
Nice. That's good. I mean, I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where if you give it the framing, then it narrows what it's going to focus on, right? Where if you don't frame it, then it gets a little bit open-ended and it can go do wacky things out in the fringes. So I've seen both approaches, but you're right. Like, I mean, I've also seen, the context window with a long preamble of here's your role, here's what you're doing, here's what the thing, here's the here's all the exposition of the thing I'm about to ask you to go do. Then your context window goes, "Tweet," and we're here.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
that's how to load in all of that. And so yeah, there's some blend.
And it's reading
'Cause
that
I've
every time, right? Like it's,
depending on how you do it, yeah, right. And so that's where I've got one of my dev managers is more on the give it some background, because every new task, every new window, it wipes its memory, right? It doesn't have any context. And so that's where giving it a little bit of like, hey, you're a software developer, this is in C Sharp and ASP.NET and Razor pages. Cool. Now here's the thing I want you to go build, right?
sure.
And it reads more stuff and tries to go get more context. Okay, well, let me go read read the models. Let me go read the views. Let me go read all the things. Try to figure out what the hell we're actually doing here.
Do you find that's better in like another document instead of in the context window? Make an instructions doc, have it reference that.
Definitely. I
Go grab.
I leverage, at least in Visual Studio Code, you can, and with GitHub Copilot, you can certainly go generate instructions, and it will go build a baseline. Here's what you need to, here's the salient details about the thing. I definitely find that overall, well, produces a better product, and has all the guardrails and the decisions that I've already made locked in. Because you're right. Because otherwise, then the burden's on me to type all that out, and I don't want to type all that out. Once the baseline is set up, then I'm much more like you, of like, hey, today we're gonna go build this thing, and I talk to it like I'm talking to a person,
Yeah.
right? Because that's just me, and I don't. I even tell the Amazon orb here that, like, thank you.
Yeah.
And most of that's just a model for the kids that, like, yeah, it's persona, but like we don't want to be rude to people and things, and that's sort of an
Exactly.
extension of a persona. So like I say thank you.
Yeah, I do that, and I say that's because I don't want to get used to talking like an idiot or like an asshole. I don't want to get used to
Right.
that, because then when I go into the real world and talk to somebody, I want to be able to remember to say thank you and say please. And
Right. We should have manners, and we
yeah,
should teach manners, and it seems silly to tell the Amazon orb, thank you and please, but also like I don't want to be a dick.
yeah, and
To
it
people,
keeps
right?
it keeps me in the habit of that. I think it's not that I think that AI is going to remember during the AI overlord takeover that I said thank
Take
you,
over, right?
but
I
it's
don't
just
know,
keep
with
me
a
in the
three
habit of being polite.
with a 3 billion IQ, maybe it goes, you know what, Keith? You've been nice more than not, so you get to say, Zazzo, get the fuck out. You're done. Out you go.
Maybe. Oh my God. Well, man, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate
It's
you
been a lot
taking
of
the
fun.
time. Thank you so much for doing this. It was I had a lot of fun. It's great seeing you again.
Yeah. We should do it again soon. It's been, not 25 more years later.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll add you on
Or
WhatsApp and I'll send you
25.
that video. I'm gonna also probably put it in the clip here, show Rick talking about you a
Oh
little
God.
bit.
Oh God.
That'll be some
Okay.
good context. Hopefully, I can get him on the pod too.
Yeah. That'd be good to. Yeah. He connected us and reached out after a little while, and yeah, I know we got to get him sitting on the chair too.
For sure. All right. Thanks so much, man. Stick around because it's got to upload. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Talk to you soon.